Chapter 428. After the plane landed at Treasure Island Airport, Jiang Xiu had wanted to take a flight back to China. Little did he know that his attack had triggered a tsunami around Japan that affected Treasure Island. It wasn't that the power of the attack had affected Treasure Island, but it was a natural chain reaction after the tsunami had formed. Treasure Island's response to the unpredictable dangers caused by the uncertain climate was to suspend all flights. The two of them had no choice but to leave the airport temporarily and take the opportunity to visit Taiwan. Taiwan's snacks were very famous, and Jiang Xiu wanted to try them. After the battle, he urgently needed energy to replenish his body. Although the food in the mortal world could not replenish much, it was still good to satisfy his appetite. However, Jiang Xiu soon ran into a dilemma. He was used to not carrying any money or documents with him. Xiao Xuetong always had an assistant, and her documents were all with her assistant. However, her assistant had already been buried by Jiang Xiu's knife. Xiao Xuetong took out 10,000 yen from her pocket after a long time. She exchanged it at the last minute. If she needed to buy it, she could use it in an emergency. It was only a few hundred yuan. It should be enough to eat some snacks. Her heart was a little excited. She nervously stole a glance at Jiang Xiu, and her pretty face couldn't help but heat up. After Jiang Xiu saved her from the robbers that day, this boy walked into her heart. It's been a long time since I went shopping without any restrictions. The girl was shy and excited. I'm afraid this little money is not enough to eat. Jiang Xiu felt that the money was too little. If he ate without restraint, he could eat more than 10 times without stopping. Don't you celebrities use your face? Taiwan was a Chinese-speaking area. Xiao Xuetong was so popular, and there was no reason why she was not famous in Taiwan. I don't want to. Xiao Xuetong turned her face away. She disdained to do such a thing. Other people's enthusiasm was other people's business. She felt that she had to have a bottom line. You eat first. If you don't have enough money, I have something to pawn it off. Looking at Xiao Xuetong's branded clothes, the rings on her fingers, and the pendants should be able to sell for a lot of money. This time, Jiang Xiu was relieved. Seeing his relieved look, Xiao Xuetong couldn't help but roll her eyes. She was worried that Jiang Xiu would sell her. Actually, I have a friend in Taiwan. We can ask him. Friend? Young Master Qin's family. Didn't you say he still owes you 100 million? Go and get it back. 100 million is enough for you to buy half of this food street. Jiang Xiu was confused. Isn't the Qin family a big family in China? Xiao Xuetong said. Qin Weiping set up a diamond brand in Taiwan. Maybe it's easy to fool people with the Taiwanese brand. In reality, the processing factory should be in China. Back then, Qin Weiping's investment in Jiangqing failed mainly because he lost most of his assets because of the supernatural incident. He took the 100 million yuan discount from the Wang family and gave up on the real estate industry in China. Maybe he was scared, so he came to Taiwan and used the Nangong family's power to set up a diamond and gold market in Africa. He started a jewelry business, and he really made a fortune. Qin Weiping was a capable person. It was just that he was unlucky last time. The land he bought happened to be in a supernatural situation that he could not solve. His second-generation son wanted to play with small celebrities. After all, he was the son of an official and had a huge advantage in resources. Coupled with the resources in Japan, he quickly played with it. It must be very profitable to buy jewelry, right? The Taiwanese authorities were also completely shocked by the news from Nation. Anyone who heard this news would be shocked to the extreme. The strength of Hua Nation made them feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. Compared to Tokyo, Taiwanese was only a little bigger. Similarly, if they angered Jiang Luoxia, it would be a piece of cake. Anyone would be afraid if they were in his shoes. Qin Weiping had never thought that the person who had pressured him to the point where he was at a loss for what to do would actually grow to this extent. When Jiang Xiu had just dealt with the Wangs, he was already worried that Jiang Xiu would come looking for trouble with him. A large part of the reason why he had given up on the real estate business and switched to Taiwan was to avoid Jiang Xiu. But who would have thought that the Wang family was just the beginning? From then on, Jiang Xiu became even more uncontrollable. He destroyed the Jiang family, the Zhuge family, killed Si Wuxia, and now killed Jizhou Nunnery. He even wanted to bury the whole of Tokyo with him. All the tyrants in human history added together were no match for him. The woman beside her stared blankly at the news on the big screen. Her eyes were glazed over. Ziyuan seems to still be in Tokyo. Is he still in Tokyo? Qin Weiping's body went limp and fell to the ground. His son had to prepare for Xiao Xuetong's concert. He was indeed in Tokyo. Tokyo was destroyed, so he must be dead. He was wearing a suit today. His wife beside him was also wearing an elegant evening gown. Today was the banquet after the launch of their new jewelry. The Qin family's wealth was astonishing. Coupled with their connections in China, they were very popular in Taiwan. The people who attended the banquet were all the top figures in the Taiwanese government. They could be said to be the proper aristocrats. Most of the powerful people in Taiwan were invited to their banquet. Cheer up. Things have already happened. We must hold on and entertain the guests well. But our son? No matter what, we must hold on for today's banquet. After adjusting their emotions, the couple walked out of the lounge. Outside, there were all the celebrities and VIPs of Taiwan. Elegant music echoed in the banquet hall. The banquet hall was bustling with life. Mr. Qin, Mrs. Qin is out. Countless guests applauded. Today was Qin Weiping's banquet. They were not stingy with their goodwill. Congratulations. Congratulations. Qin Weiping had a kind smile on his face. There was no trace of pain from losing his son. His wife was also smiling. She waved her hand and greeted the guests. Thank you all for coming to the banquet of Qin's jewelry. Thank you for your support. This season's jewelry was selling very well, and the profit was amazing. In a short time, Qin Weiping had accumulated a lot of wealth. In addition, jewelry was originally the plaything of the rich and powerful, which made the Qin family even more lofty. In order to thank everyone, I plan to donate 10 million yuan to the Children's Fund in Taiwan. It was a trend for the rich to do good deeds, and it was also a common practice. However, it was unknown how many people actually donated, and even more unknown how many of the donations would actually fall into the hands of the so-called needy. However, the rich had earned a good reputation. Thunderous applause came from below. Suddenly a voice sounded. Qin Weiping, it seems like you've made a lot of money over the years. Who is it? It was extremely disrespectful to call Qin Weiping by his full name. Many people were angry. Moreover, the person who called him by his full name sounded very unfriendly. Who dares to make a fuss here? Everyone looked over and saw a handsome man appear in the distance. However, he was dressed casually and did not fit in with the people at the banquet who were all dressed in formal attire. The people gathered here were all aristocrats of the upper class. Their hair was waxed and they wore cologne. They were well dressed and looked like they were glowing. Who are you? How did you get in? This is a private club. Outsiders are not allowed in. If you don't have an invitation, please leave. Jiang Xiu ignored these people and stared at Qin Weiping in the distance. He had not seen him for several years, but he did not seem to have changed much. If there was a change, it was that he was more imposing than before. When Qin Weiping saw Jiang Xiu, he was stunned. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Confusion, panic, fear, horror, astonishment, regret, all sorts of emotions filled his heart, leaving him at a loss. It had been 5 years. He thought that this matter was over. He had once been restless. However, as Jiang Xiu did not appear for a long time, he gradually forgot about it. He had almost forgotten all these years. He did not expect that Jiang Xiu would appear in front of him again. He was not prepared at all. Shouldn't he be in our nation? Did you hear that, boy? This is not a place where you can come in. Security. Qin Weiping's wife felt that her husband's face was pale, and his body was trembling. He had not been like this even when he heard the bad news about his son. She asked with concern, Weiping, what's wrong with you? Are you not feeling well? Who on earth is this man? Jiang Xiu walked to the center of the hall. Qin Weiping felt so nervous that he even stopped breathing. I'm here to collect my debt. Chapter 429. At that time, Wanji Real Estate already belonged to Jiang Xiu, but the name was not transferred. Qin Weiping transferred it to the Wang family. This debt was not just the original money. Now Jiang Xiu's wealth was immeasurable. What he cared about was that Qin Weiping had tricked him in the past. With Jiang Luoxia's character, it was impossible for him to swallow this. With his means of revenge, it would definitely be a disaster. "Sir, please leave immediately." Several security guards rushed over, but their tone was still very polite and cautious. People from Taiwan were not good at fighting. If it were people from Liaodong, they would beat them up in the morning. "Don't," Qin Weiping cried in horror. Once Jiang Xiu made a move, there would be no room for negotiation. However, the person in front of him would definitely not let him have an easy time. "Sir, may I ask who you are?" He tried his best to make his tone calm. He wanted to cover up this matter with a casual attitude. "You made a fortune with my money, but now you pretend not to know me?" As soon as he said this, the whole place suddenly fell silent. Haha, what a joke. Qin Weiping didn't say anything, but the general manager of the Qin's jewelry company had already laughed. He looked very shrewd, wearing glasses, and his face was full of anger. The Qin family is a rich family in the capital, and is the in-law of the Nangong family. They can't have as much money as they want. Making a fortune with your money is the funniest joke I've ever heard. The people around him laughed very cooperatively. What's more, did you sign a contract? Transfer receipt guarantor? None of them? He couldn't help laughing. If none of them were signed, even if Mr. Qin really took his money, he could deny it. There was no evidence, and it was not protected by the law. It would be difficult to get it back. "Sir, I advise you not to make trouble for yourself. Go back in the same way you came." Everyone saw that the general manager of the Qin's jewelry company was so eloquent, and his momentum was even more amazing. They couldn't help but think in their hearts that no wonder he could become the general manager of the Qin's jewelry company. He was really capable. Jiang Xiu shook his head lightly. "After so many years, you should have come to me. If you took the initiative to come to me, I should have a reason to let you go. It's a pity that you didn't cherish it." Qin Weiping's heart tightened, and a huge chill of fear surged out from his heart. His body trembled uncontrollably, and his heart was filled with endless regret. He had thought of this when Jiang Xiu conquered the Wang family, but greed got the better of him. "Sir, are you listening to what I'm saying?" The general manager of the Qin group frowned. The feeling of being ignored was really unpleasant. "Sir, you are being very rude. You first barged into our private gathering, and now you have such a negotiating attitude. We have the right to kick you out. Don't forget that this is Treasure Island. Don't cause trouble here, or you won't be able to bear the consequences." He could tell that Jiang Xiu had an obvious mainland accent. "Noisy." Jiang Xiu frowned and swung his hand. With a bang, the arrogant general manager was sent flying backward. He didn't fly a few meters but more than 10 meters. He hit the wall and fell to the ground. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Wow. The crowd was in an uproar. They didn't think that Jiang Xiu would dare to make a move. Moreover, he was a god's discoverer. Notify the Shenzhen Special Police Station immediately. There was a special police station in Treasure Island, and all of the people there were God's discoverers. They were there to deal with God's discoverers, and the person who gave the order was the so-called chief of the special police station. "How dare you make a move here? Treasure Island's special police station isn't just for show." Jiang Xiu coldly glanced at him. "Do you want to die too?" Qin Weiping was afraid that things would get out of hand, so he hurriedly said, "Sir, let's talk things over." He definitely couldn't admit that Jiang Xiu was a god. Otherwise, the show would be exposed. "You said you want a debt. How much money do you want?" He had thought about it. He would pay any amount. The surrounding people all thought in their hearts that Mr. Qin's words meant that he wanted to settle the matter with money. However, they saw Jiang Xiu slowly stretch out a finger. 100 million? The crowd was in an uproar. This was really an exorbitant demand. "Okay, I'll give it to you, but you have to leave after you take the money." Qin Weiping let out a long sigh of relief. He didn't expect Jiang Xiu to be so particular. He only took an extra 100 million that year. Now he had nothing to say if Jiang Xiu wanted it back at the original price. Not 100 million but 10 billion. "What?" Qin Weiping screamed. Mrs. Qin's eyes widened. Their current net worth was about 10 billion. This was going to bankrupt them. How dare you? This is extortion. The chief of the special police station shouted angrily. He really didn't expect that in front of him, the chief of the SWAT bureau, who ruled the island by force, this kid who came out of nowhere would dare to ask Mr. Qin for 10 billion renminbi. If he couldn't even protect the lives of foreign businessmen, who would dare to invest in Taiwan in the future? Boom, boom. The sound of a helicopter came from the sky above the venue. Police cars arrived outside the venue. The scene was very frightening. Qin Weiping's body trembled. The person in front of him was Jiang Luoxia. If the Juzhou family offended him, they would be buried with him. How could these special police officers be enough to go against him? Little brother, stop. Although I don't know who you are, I can see that you're not an ordinary person. If you only want 100 million, I'll give it to you. But if you want to use force, then this is the chief of the special police station. He can mobilize all the spiritual cultivators in Treasure Island. He's not easy to deal with, Qin Weiping said. His words didn't make sense. He was already panicking. You really don't remember me? Then let me remind you. Jiang Xiu raised his head and looked up. Through the roof, he seemed to be able to see the helicopter in the sky. He waved his hand and a sharp blade flashed out. With a bang, a huge hole was cut in the roof. The blade did not slow down and hit the helicopter in the sky. With a boom, the helicopter exploded on the spot. Wow! Cries of surprise rang out from the crowd. Everyone was frightened by this scene. What a powerful sword light! Chief Zhang Can's pupils constricted immediately. Everyone present was surprised. He was actually such a powerful spiritual cultivator, an advanced warlord, and a demigod? No wonder you're so arrogant. You asked for 10 billion. Jiang Xiu looked at Qin Weiping mockingly. Do you remember who I am now? If you don't, I'll remind you again. Qin Weiping was struggling in his heart. In front of Jiang Xiu, he wasn't qualified to play tricks. However, asking for 10 billion was simply asking for his life. Jiang Xiu walked toward him. You, what do you want? Chief Zhang Can sneered and stepped forward. A person who could become the chief of the special police station in Treasure Island was definitely not an ordinary person. This person's cultivation level was certainly not weak. He was a demigod. Earth-shattering fist. He suddenly punched the ground. A wave of air rushed along the ground and was about to blast Jiang Xiu away. The special police officers outside rushed in after hearing the commotion. They aimed their guns at Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu smiled faintly. It was considered good that a demigod could touch the edge of the law of the earth. He discovered a characteristic. It seemed that the current demigod's divine body hadn't evolved much. Most of them had touched the law of the earth. However, they had only touched the surface. They hadn't really stepped into the law. His figure swayed, and by the time they saw him again, the force from the ground had already disappeared. He was already right in front of Qin Weiping, grabbing Qin Weiping's neck with one hand and lifting this billionaire into the air. Stop it. Let go of Mr. Qin. Qin Weiping widened his eyes in horror. Mrs. Qin, who was next to him, was paralyzed on the ground. If you don't let go, I'll shoot. Do. An invisible force rushed out and blew everything around them away. The guests, bodyguards, and even the chief were all thrown off their feet. With Jiang Xiu as the center, there was nothing left within a radius of 10 meters. His inner force was so strong that even the chief of Treasure Island was stunned. I'll give you 1 day. If you don't prepare the money by this time tomorrow, you can prepare to collect Qin Weiping's corpse. Jiang Xiu looked at Mrs. Qin, who was paralyzed on the ground. Stop! Chief Zhang wanted to stop him. If he let him go like this, it would be a disgrace to the special police station. However, Jiang Xiu had already rushed out of the encirclement and disappeared into the distance. Chapter 430. Xiao Xuetong, who was waiting at the food street, did not expect that Jiang Xiu would kidnap someone after going to the Qin group to collect debts. Moreover, it was the boss of the Qin group. She could not help but be dumbfounded. Did the two of them have some sort of grudge? Qin Weiping was already scared out of his wits. His life was completely in the hands of Jiang Xiu. Jiang Xiu said, "If you can't remember, I'll remind you." He could no longer keep up the pretense. The Wang family forced me to do what I did. The Wang family's power in Jiangnan was not something I could resist. Jiang Xiu said jokingly. Didn't you not know me? Qin Weiping did not say anything. Let's find a place to eat first. Which restaurant in Taiwan is the best? The news that the CEO of the Qin Jewelry Company had been kidnapped during the celebration banquet quickly spread throughout Taiwan. As a famous tycoon in Taiwan, the Qin family had been doing well in the past few years. Especially when China's economy was booming and Taiwan's economy was in recession, Qin Weiping's outstanding status was highlighted. His net worth was in the tens of billions, which was enough to rank him in the top 10 of Taiwan. In addition to his connections, even the Taiwanese authorities had to be polite when they saw him. They even had to bow to him. The kidnapping of such a big shot was like a bomb dropping on the ground. This led to a great deal of anger from the Taiwanese authorities. Who dares to touch our Taiwanese entrepreneur? The Taiwanese authorities were furious and reprimanded their subordinates on the spot. Chief Zhang was among them. He was especially embarrassed because Qin Weiping was kidnapped right in front of him. Call the self-defense forces and have them block off all the important roads. Have the special police department put down all the cases on hand, and send everyone over to rescue Mr. Qin. Also call the Three Bamboo Gang. Could this person be related to the underworld? An old man pushed open the door to the meeting room. Mr. Chen, why are you here? Everyone present stood up in a flurry. If I didn't come, I wouldn't have known that the biggest jeweler in Taiwan had been kidnapped in front of everyone. Everyone present lowered their heads in shame. Mr. Chen, we are trying to rescue him. Old Mr. Chen snorted and said, Rescue? You can rescue her, but can you let someone kidnap her right under your nose? What does Mrs. Qin mean? Will she prepare the money? The people at the scene looked at each other, and could not help but feel confused about Mr. Chen's opinion. One of them opened his mouth and said, Money is just a worldly possession, Mr. Qin will probably give it. Before he came, he seemed to have the intention to sell the business. But 10 billion, even the Qin family would have to sell everything they have. It would be too troublesome to prepare, and it would not be easy to sell such a big jewelry store, unless the government buys it. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. You're just one person, yet you're trying to extort 10 billion from others. Do you really think that money is so easy to earn? But the Qin family is likely to give the money. If the Qin family doesn't agree, Mr. Qin's life will be in danger. Mr. Qin is the backbone of the Qin family. Without him, the Qin family won't be able to survive. Even if they can survive, since that person is after the Qin family's money, if he can kidnap Mr. Qin, he can also kidnap Mrs. Qin. Everyone's expression was solemn. The most important thing now is to figure out this person's background. This person is scary because we know nothing about him. As long as we know someone well, then no matter how strong he is not invincible, Mr. Chen said. Everyone at the scene nodded. They had learned a lot. Mr. Chen, look. This is the person in the video. The relevant personnel had already copied the video and played it on the big screen. From the conversation between him and Mr. Qin, it seems that they have a grudge. But Mr. Qin doesn't seem to remember who he is. Mr. Chen stared at the person in the video. This person is extraordinary. He has a godlike feeling. He looks familiar. Do you know his name? Everyone at the scene shook their heads. I don't know. He didn't say anything. It looks like him. Mr. Chen's gaze was fixed on the person in the video. Who? Mr. Chen shook his head. If it's him, then it's too scary. It shouldn't be him. He should be in Japan right now. Also, he would not make such a big fuss over 10 billion. Who is Mr. Chen talking about? Jiang Luoxia, who dropped the 9 mysteries cleansing heaven. Mr. Chen's eyes twitched when he mentioned the name. Although Treasure Island was outside, they were all Chinese. Jiang Luoxia's strength was also their pride. No way. Could he be Mr. Jiang? Everyone at the scene shook their heads. But he really looks like him. If it's him, we should invite the Thunder God. Mr. Chen shook his head. No, you might not know what happened in Japan not long ago. Even if we invited the Thunder God, it was useless. I think he should be invincible. Contact the mainland. No matter who this person is, Mr. Qin is from the mainland. Treasure Island is weak internally and can't deal with him. Moreover, the other party is also from the mainland. Let them deal with it themselves. Soon, they contacted the mainland. After all, the Qin family and the Nangong family were relatives. The Nangong family was the central reserve and was almost at the top of the pyramid. The two sides had a short negotiation. The Treasure Island side sent the video and asked them to investigate the identity of the robber in a branded Hakka restaurant in the commercial center of Treasure Island. More than a dozen aircraft circled in the sky, surrounded by police cars. As the police cars screamed, countless special police officers were on standby. However, no one dared to rush over. They were intimidated by Jiang Xiu's cultivation level. On the other hand, they were worried about Qin Weiping's safety. I'll give you the money you want. With your current status, I don't dare to act rashly in front of you. Jiang Xiu said. I gave you a chance. Mr. Jiang, Jiang Xiu said. I won't let those who offend me have it easy. Do you know what happened to Jiujiu Nunnery? Qin Weiping's face was pale. You're lucky. I didn't pursue the matter because of a friend. Unfortunately, you didn't know how to cherish it. 5 years. You miss 5 years. Mr. Jiang, please listen to my explanation. Qin Weiping was so scared that his legs were weak. He couldn't sit still. However, he found that it was useless to explain anything. In fact, there was no way to explain at all. I want to ask, who is that friend? Jiang Xiu said. You should know. Is it Ko? Jiang Xiu smiled. Qin Weiping felt like a drowning person touching a float. I have a good relationship with Ko. I used to play with him when I was young. Jiang Xiu said. Which family is the most powerful in Treasure Island? Qin Weiping said. The Chens. Jiang Xiu said. Who is the enemy of the Chens? Qin Weiping didn't know, so he thought for a moment and said. The Ma family, but they are too weak. However, they have a high reputation in Treasure Island. Call the head of the Ma family and ask him to come here. Qin Weiping nodded hurriedly and quickly called the Ma family. They were very surprised to receive Qin Weiping's call. At this time, Ma Yun-san was watching the news at home and learned that he had been kidnapped. Mr. Ma, there is a distinguished guest who wants to see you. Mr. Qin, please don't do this to me. I know your situation. Qin Weiping smiled bitterly and said. It was that gentleman who asked me to call you. Do you know who he is? No matter who he is, the Ma family doesn't want to be in contact with such a person. Ma Yun-san was from a scholarly family and had a high reputation in Treasure Island. However, he lacked martial arts skills. Qin Weiping said. If you know who he is, you will definitely come, People who met Jiang Luoxia would either fly to the sky or fall to hell. There was no other possibility. Then may I ask, who is that person? Qin Weiping looked at Jiang Xiu and only dared to say. His surname is Jiang. In China, everyone only calls him Mr. Jiang. There was a clatter on the other end of the phone. The teacup fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. You mean he is? But isn't he in our nation? Why? The message has been delivered. You should think about whether you want to see him or not. If you don't see Mr. Jiang, then others will see him. You should think about the consequences. You should know what you are missing. Chapter 431. Ma Yun-san's family was one of the most prestigious families in Taiwan. Unfortunately, they were suppressed by the Chun family. Originally, the two families were evenly matched, but after the Chun family joined America, the Ma family had no chance at all. Now the situation was getting worse and worse. The Ma family had basically given up the idea of resistance. However, this phone call ignited the hope in his heart. Back then, only Jiang Luoxia could compete with America. Especially after the incident in Japan not long ago. Jiang Luoxia's inhuman strength was deeply imprinted in his mind. Mr. Qin. Ma Yun-san's heartbeat accelerated uncontrollably. Jiang Luoxia wanted to fight against America. If he got on his boat, of course he would be on the rise. However, if he failed, he would lose his life. I'll do it. The 3 words Jiang Luoxia seemed to have magical power. It deeply attracted Ma Yunsan. He couldn't control himself at all. He didn't think about it at all. When he felt that the other party was about to hang up, he shouted with all his strength. Mrs. Li Yilan, who was outside the house, heard the commotion and walked in. She was shocked when she saw her husband like this. "What's wrong? Who's calling you so agitated?" She couldn't believe that her gentle and elegant husband was so agitated when he was young. Now that he was old, he was still so agitated. Her mood also relaxed. The other party hung up the phone. There was no need to say where Jiang Luoxia was now. Everyone was surrounding him. Ma Yunsan couldn't breathe smoothly. The moment he shouted, his whole body was boiling. His eyes were red as he said, "Help me prepare clothes. Something formal." Oh. She hurriedly went into the house to prepare. Hurry up. He, who had never been in a hurry, was anxious today. He couldn't wait to go immediately. He wanted to see Jiang Xiu, but he was also afraid that things would change midway. "Got it. Who's calling?" Ma Yunsan said. "A person who can change the fate of our entire family. A peerless hero." Although he was a scholar, he wasn't pedantic. In this world, he couldn't be pedantic. He quickly changed his clothes, got into his car and set off. When he arrived at the street where the restaurant was located, there was a red alert ahead. There were cordons around, and helicopters were constantly hovering in the sky. Ma Yunsan's car was also stopped. "Mr. Ma, why are you here?" The SWAT officers were surprised to see him. "Mr. Qin asked to see me." "But," Ma Yunsan said, "if anything happens, I'll take care of it myself." There had been no progress. The special agent hesitated and decided to let him in. Although Ma Yunsan had lost his power, his reputation and connections were still there. He couldn't afford to offend him. "Then, Mr. Ma, take care of yourself." The car drove in, and less than a minute after the car drove in, the Chun family, the SWAT chief, and a large number of Taiwanese authorities arrived. Old Mr. Chen asked nervously, "How is it inside? Did you offend him?" Everyone's expression changed. The SWAT officer said, "Sir, we didn't take any measures." That's good. After the mainland received the video, they confirmed one thing for them. The man in the video was Jiang Luoxia. A Jiang Luoxia who destroyed an entire city with a single slash. He had just gone to Japan and was now in Taiwan. China was under pressure from the public opinion all over the world. All the divisions were rushing to protect the country. The storm was unpredictable. East Asia was like a bomb with a lit fuse that could explode at any time. But everyone in Taiwan knew that the Chen family and the Ma family were not on good terms. The SWAT officer didn't know if he should say it. But what? Facing the authority, the SWAT officer still decided to say, "Mr. Ma Yunsan went in just now. He said that Mr. Qin asked him to come." "What?" Old Mr. Chen's face turned pale. He grabbed the SWAT officer's collar agitatedly. You say that again?" The SWAT officer was shocked. Mr. Ma went in. Mr. Qin asked him to come." The expressions of the people around also changed. What did he ask Ma Yunsan to do? What did he want to do? Old Mr. Chen was a little out of control. An unprecedented fear came over him. Over the years, he had been close to American Barney and distant from China. Jiang Xiu was surprised when he saw Ma Yunsan. A man in his 50s could be so gentle and elegant. No wonder he was the son of a rich family. He must have been even more extraordinary when he was young. "Mr. Jiang." Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. Although Ma Yunsan didn't have the aura of a tyrant, this was not a country. His status should be comparable to Gudiji's. "Do you know why I asked you to come here?" Ma Yunsan shook his head. "If you don't know, why are you still here?" Ma Yunsan said, "Mr. Jiang is here. I don't dare to guess." Take care of Taiwan. Ma Yunsan thought about it over and over again on the way here. In the end, it was indeed the result. Jiang Xiu went to East China and killed 7 gods with great fanfare. In the end, he recovered East China. Now that he came to Taiwan, with his status, it was not worthwhile for him to make such a big fuss over a mere Qin Weiping. This was the only reason, and it was the only reason. The Chen family is in charge. I can't make the decision. At this time, a horn sounded outside. "Dear Mr. Jiang, welcome to Taiwan." Can we come in? If Ma Yunsen hadn't gone in, they wouldn't have dared to come in and talk to Jiang Xiu. They thought that what Ma Yunsen could do for Jiang Xiu, they could do it too. Jiang Xiu turned around and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. He looked at the crowd on the road in the distance. Ma Yunsen came behind Jiang Xiu and looked at the crowd on the street. The old man in the middle is Mr. Chun. The one on the right is his son. He is very close to American Barney. Mr. Jiang. A middle-aged man beside Mr. Chun walked out with a loudspeaker and said, Mr. Jiang, I am Chen Yongnian from the Chen family. I am good friends with Mr. Glan from American Barney. I even talked to God of Thunder. Can I come in and talk to you? Useless people. Whoosh. Bang. A flash of sword light appeared. The floor-to-ceiling window in front of them shattered. The sword light flashed in the distance and disappeared. Chen Yongnian's eyes suddenly dimmed. The sword light had already pierced through his body. His body fell to the ground, motionless. Yongnian, Yongnian. Another saber light flashed, and old Master Chen's body suddenly stiffened, and he fell forward. The people around him all stepped back in fear. Their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Jiang Xiu said in an indifferent tone, Wherever I go, I have the final say. Dead, they're all dead? Ma Yunsan was also stunned. He was the kind of person who couldn't pick up a butcher's knife. He was very bookish. Maybe when someone's knife fell, he would only think of using his knife to block it, instead of stabbing it into the opponent's body. Mr. Ma, do you know Qin Weiping? Ma Yunsan nodded with a pale face. He was now more afraid of Jiang Xiu. It was true that this person was a tyrant. Since ancient times, being with a tyrant was like being with a tiger. Yes. It was Qin Weiping who recommended you. You should thank him. Ma Yunsan immediately thanked Qin Weiping. Qin Weiping was confused and didn't know what to do. Ma Yunsan asked, Does Mr. Jiang have a grudge against Mr. Qin? Jiang Xiu called Qin Weiping to his side. Mr. Qin, tell Mr. Ma about our past. Qin Weiping told him the general story. He was very fair and told the truth. Mr. Jiang, it's my fault. For Ko'er's sake, please spare my life. Jiang Xiu's eyes were indifferent. He said, Do you know how I dealt with Wang Xuehai in those days? He looked down. Outside the broken floor-to-ceiling window they were in was the air. It was 10 floors high, about 30 meters high. It was very high, and the wind was blowing in their faces. People with acrophobia had their legs weak at this moment, and Qin Weiping's legs were already trembling. Ah! A scream drifted in the wind and spread far away, which made people's hair stand on end. The figure fell from the sky and fell heavily to the ground. Ma Yunsan, who was next to him, trembled all over. I can give you glory and wealth, but I can also make you fall into hell. Ma Yunsan, you have to go your own way in the future. Ma Yunsan stepped back a few steps and fell to the ground. He looked up at the demon-like figure and nodded mechanically. He was completely scared out of his wits. Get ready, I'm going back to the mainland by plane. Chapter 432. Not only was Ma Yunsan scared out of his wits, but so was Xiao Xuetong. She was at the scene when Tokyo was cut down. Although she was shocked, it was not as exciting as the bloody scene in front of her. The boy in her mind seemed to be incompatible with the man in front of her. But on second thought, if only 3 people died, the problem of Taiwan would be solved. The cost was so small that it was negligible. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a heaven-defying achievement. He was both a demon and a god. There were only 2 people in the spacious cabin. Although Jiang Xiu was right beside her, she felt that he was out of her reach. He was too far away and did not belong to her world. When the plane landed, the big boss sent a car to pick them up. The situation was really serious. The pressure from the upper echelons of the country was really great. It was unprecedentedly great. However, Jiang Xiu did not take the car sent by the big boss. Instead, he took Wang Xintong's car. Wang Xintong came to pick him up personally. She rushed over from Jiangnan as soon as she heard the news. The whole of Jiangnan strongly supported Jiang Xiu, but it seemed weak. Jiang Xiu and the authorities had to face the whole world led by America. Wang Xintong did not only wait for Jiang Xiu, but also for Xiao Xuetong. She was slightly surprised. With Jiang Xiu's personality, how could he get together with a celebrity? Moreover, it was under such a serious situation. But she still maintained a good demeanor. Miss Xu, hello. Xiao Xuetong nodded. Hello. Jiang Xiu had already sat in the car. The big boss's driver and secretary could only stand in the wind in the distance. It was a dereliction of duty that they did not pick up Jiang Xiu. However, they could only watch as Jiang Xiu and his group left. Wang Xintong looked at Jiang Xiu and said, "Should we send Miss Xu back first?" She did not know if Jiang Xiu wanted to take Xiao Xuetong back or let her leave. Yes, send me back first. Xiao Xuetong took the initiative to bring up the issue. First it was the issue of Japan, then it was the issue of Taiwan. She had a home in the capital. As a celebrity, especially a famous one, she had a lot of assets. She had houses all over the country. After sending Xiao Xuetong back, Jiang Xiu went to the manor that the big boss had arranged for him last time. He said, "Arrange for 2 capable people to go to Bao Island and help Ma Yunsan deal with some troublesome matters. Don't be too strong. Listen to Ma Yunsan and don't steal his thunder." Ma Yunsan, are you talking about the Ma clan from Taiwan? Wang Xintong said. Don't tell me you went to Treasure Island and made a scene there. Humph. Wang Xintong felt a slight headache and dizziness. She couldn't help but reach out to support herself. What a troublemaker. Or was it that when one had too many lice, one wouldn't feel itchy anymore? The situation in Ri Nation was already at their doorstep. Yet they still went to Treasure Island to stir up trouble. However, to put it bluntly, it was the same thing. Behind this trouble was the United States. If they could deal with it, then everything would be fine. If they couldn't, then what awaited them would be a disaster. Thor is already on the plane. Silverwing is here too. No matter who he faced, Wang Xintong felt that Jiang Xiu had no confidence in winning, especially Thor. Thor was the only god who was ranked higher than Jiang Xiu on the divine ranking list. Jiang Xiu said calmly, "Prepare some food. There's nothing good on the plane. Ma Yunsan is not as meticulous as you. Even Gu Deji is not as good as you." Wang Xintong hesitated for a long time. "Aren't you afraid at all? Thor and Silverwing are coming together." When she said this, Wang Xintong's eyes were full of worry. The corners of her lips were twitching slightly. Unlike Si Wuxia, this time, the pressure she faced was too great. Jiang Xiu's attack had shocked the world, but it had also angered the world and made them their enemy. "What are you afraid of?" Wang Xintong took a deep breath and said, "I'm afraid of death." Once Jiang Xiu was defeated, all of Jiang Luoxia's direct descendants would suffer, including her, Jiang Xiu's parents, and Jiang Xiu's beloved Cheng Lingran. In the face of such pressure, Wang Xintong didn't see a trace of fear on Jiang Xiu's face. She couldn't even see any emotional fluctuations. He was as cold as ever. Death. Jiang Xiu looked at the distant sky. He still remembered the first person he killed. It was his senior brother from Tianqing School. He couldn't remember what he looked like now. Every month, half of his resources were taken away, and he was called a good-for-nothing. Finally, one day he couldn't stand it anymore. He picked up a long sword and killed him. Looking at his senior brother lying in a pool of blood, Jiang Xiu had a kind of awareness in his heart. Sooner or later, he would die under someone else's sword, just like his senior brother in the pool of blood. This was the final destination of a cultivator. Whether this was right or not, Jiang Xiu thought so. Therefore he wasn't afraid because he knew the ending. When I killed the first person with this sword, I knew that I would also die under someone else's sword. Hearing this, Wang Xintong was moved. She looked at Jiang Xiu and couldn't calm down for a long time. Jiang Xiu was cold and ruthless, but he was deeply in love. Jiang Xiu was arrogant, but he exuded sadness from his bones. What a contradiction. Life or death, I'll accompany you. Jiang Xiu glanced at her and smiled. You're quite good at climbing up the ladder. You are you and I am me. Don't confuse us. Then are you still thinking about Cheng Lingran? Jiang Xiu walked away. Wang Xintong's way of doing things was indeed not comparable to Ma Yunsan's. She also knew Jiang Xiu's taste, so she ate to her heart's content. The sound of a car came from outside. The only one who could come in was that person. The big boss came in person. At this time, the big boss looked haggard. He tidied up his suit and walked in. He happened to bump into Jiang Xiu eating, so he invited him to sit with him. From the emotional point of view, everyone clapped the table and applauded your attack. It was very satisfying. But from the human point of view, the consequences were too serious. The pressure on Diaoyu Island is unprecedented. The big boss was not in the mood to drink. Baodao is already mine. Returning it can be regarded as the biggest political achievement. Your election should be stable. Jiang Xiu cut a piece of lamb leg and ate it, saying without a trace. The big boss was obviously stunned and lost his mind. If this was really the case, the election could be said to be in the bag. When did this happen? Jiang Xiu said. On the way back. The big boss was so angry that he almost vomited blood. So many years, so many people, and so many people worked tirelessly for it, but it was solved on the way back. Comparisons were odious, and comparisons were odious. What you said is useless. If something happens to you, everything we've done will be in vain. Thunder God and Silver Wing can't stop them. They're already here. How can eggs remain intact when the nest is overturned? We've considered giving up some benefits. I hope there won't be a direct confrontation. Jiang Xiu looked up. This doesn't seem to be your style. A hint of helplessness flashed through the big boss's eyes. It was impossible for him to have the final say on such a big matter, especially during the transition period. He couldn't even make a decision on an unrealistic spiritual stone of the kingdom, let alone such a big matter. Then it's impossible for Baodao. Your election may not be possible. Jiang Xiu did not care about these things. The only thing he cared about was the spirit stone. If this happened, he might also lose the longevity stone talisman. To him, nothing was more important than the longevity stone talisman. Anything that stood in his way, he would slash apart with his saber. Let them come. Jiang Luoxia has nothing to fear. A plane from America landed at the imperial capital airport. There was a huge welcoming party and an unprecedented reception. Other than the Chinese reporters from all over the world almost blocked the exit of the airport. There were 3 layers of reporters inside and 3 layers outside. It was said that Mr. Rogart and an even more respected god would be coming down from the plane. He was the number 1 on the divine list, known as the Thunder God of Divine Punishment. It was the first time that the Thunder God had set foot on this magical land of the East. He frowned as soon as he got off the plane. He found that there was a layer of membrane separating him from the power of heaven and earth. It was very difficult, and he could not even absorb a large amount of it. The East is really magical. Under such circumstances, it was more important to rely on the body's own storage of divine power and the ability to regenerate. I'm looking forward to it. I heard that there is a wall in the magical East that fends off foreign enemies. I think it's called the Great Wall. I think it's a good place. Let's meet Jiang Luoxia there. Chapter 433. When Jiang Xiu rushed into the sky with the nuclear weapon, everyone thought that he was dead. The main reason why Hua Nation was able to stand strong and not be forcibly torn apart by other countries was because there was still a mysterious existence in the country. It was not a rumor, but a real existence. Any powerful cultivator who stepped into Hua Nation would be able to feel it. It was because of this mysterious feeling that made them feel inexplicable fear. This time, if the matter had not been blown out of proportion, it would not have come to this. Jiang Luoxia is not the only top immortal in China. It is said that there is another one. In terms of strength, he is even more powerful than Jiang Luoxia. We have to be careful, Rogart said. A mysterious country covered by a veil of mystery. The god of thunder smiled. When the veil is removed, it may be a shocking scam to gain fame. This is what the Chinese are best at. It's all a pretense. The staff on the side couldn't help but laugh. This person had yellow skin, black hair, and black glasses. He had a hint of helplessness and self-mockery. Obviously, he felt that the god of thunder's words were very reasonable. Where are we going now? The guests will follow the host's instructions. We will follow the arrangements of the Chinese side. They got into the car and drove all the way to Diaoyutai. The Chinese side was going to receive them there. The main problem at the moment was that the United States was ready to go to the negotiating table. This was definitely not a good choice, but in China's eyes, it was the only choice. Besides, there were victims and China had to pay a huge price. This scene reminded people of hundreds of years ago. The schedule was not so tight. First, the guests were arranged to rest. Then they would show them some cultural characteristics of China. The formal negotiations would be held later. Underground, the god of thunder, who was ranked first on the divine roll, met with Jiang Luoxia at the top of the Great Wall. The Great Wall was very important to China. It symbolized the characteristics of the Chinese race and was an important military defense. Its total length was more than 21,000 miles, and it was called the Great Wall of China. It was the most sacred and eye-catching scenic spot in China. When the god of thunder set foot on the Great Wall, many top immortals from all over the world gathered at the Great Wall. The entire Great Wall was completely sealed and was not open to outsiders, especially ordinary tourists. What's going on today? Why is the Great Wall suddenly closed to the public? A woman complained. Beside her was a tall and beautiful woman. Looking into the distance, a large group of tourists in front of them were separated far away by a cordon. Did something happen? Yi Bing had come to the capital with her mother today. Later, Mother Yi said that she had never been to the Great Wall, so Yi Bing accompanied her here. That shouldn't be the case. They should have notified us in advance if they were going to stop opening the gates to the public. Why did they suddenly lock it up? It's not easy for us to come to the imperial capital, and it's such a pity that we couldn't visit the Great Wall. Half of it was regretful, and the other half was complaining. Could this matter be related to the foreign delegation? The crowd in front suddenly surged. The law enforcers along the way hurriedly pushed the crowd aside, as if they were facing a great enemy, making a wide path. Then they saw a fleet of cars slowly driving over like a long snake. They were all luxurious cars, which stunned everyone and caused countless people to cry out in surprise. Bentley, Ferrari, Maserati, Lincoln, Rolls-Royce. What a big show. What's going on? Is the foreign president coming for a tour? Sir, please don't say that. With such a big thing happening in Re Nation, no one is in the mood to come out for a tour. It's something important, a man on the side said. His Chinese was a little awkward, and he looked a little like a Re Nation person. At this moment, there was sadness on his face, and of course anger. A Hua Nation martial artist on the side said, "How can I not be in the mood? I'm in a good mood. Do you think there are not many people visiting the Great Wall?" The Re Nation martial artist frowned, and his eyes flashed with a fierce light. "Sir, let me give you a piece of advice. Trouble comes from the mouth." "Hey, you're still being arrogant here. This is Hua Nation," the Re Nation martial artist said. "Humph, now it is, but who knows what will happen in the future?" "What did you say?" The Re Nation martial artist sneered. "Don't you know what the strongest person in Hua Nation has done? He has angered the whole world, and is the public enemy of the world. Hua Nation will pay the price. Do you think Jiang Luoxia is strong enough to fight against the Thunder God? Don't forget about Silver Wing." The Hua Nation martial artist couldn't help but ponder. "Who are you? How do you know so much?" The Triad. These three simple words were said with incomparable arrogance. The Rising Sun Workers Union, the Apennine Mafia. The people who appeared here were all the top underground forces in the world. The martial cultivator named Wu Junhai was dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? Although Mrs. Yi didn't know these people, she could tell that they were not ordinary people. One by one, they got out of the car and slammed the door, one after another. In addition to these underground forces, there were also the powerful leaders of various countries. What the hell is going on here? Many Hua Nation people didn't know. Only a small number of people knew. However, they waited for half a day. From noon to afternoon, when the sun set, more and more people came. But strangely, they all stopped at the foot of the Great Wall. They didn't go up the Great Wall. Soon, the foot of the Great Wall was filled with guests from all over the world. No one left. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something. With such a big scene, they believed that a big shot was about to appear. Could it be a big star? Someone next to him snorted. How can an actor have that much influence? Is it the head of the country? This was the closest possibility. Many people thought so. The insider shook his head. The head of the country values safety. Why would he make such a big fuss? Usually he would arrange his schedule in advance. This situation wouldn't happen. Besides, no head of state has this kind of influence. Wu Zhenhai said. Our head of state has this kind of influence. The person from the triad sneered. Does your head of state have the right to make so many underground forces wait here? Wu Zhenhai was furious. However, he suppressed it. Although the economy of Hua Nation was better than before, these people still looked down on the people of Hua Nation. Bing Bing, let's go. Mother Yi couldn't wait any longer. Yi Bing shook her head and said, let's wait a little longer. He should be here soon. Mom, don't you want to know what's going on? At this moment, there was an uproar. Countless people looked up. They saw a man appear at the entrance of the Great Wall. He was already climbing up the Great Wall. He was the only one on the huge Great Wall. It was very eye-catching. Who is this guy? Is he blind? He's walking up so casually. Does he think he's some big shot? The man didn't walk fast. He took in the scenery around him as he walked. Who is that? Mother Ye's eyes flashed when she saw the man. He looks like your classmate. Could it be him? Mother Yi wasn't sure. What's wrong? Yi Bing had already recognized that the person was undoubtedly Jiang Xiao. Mr. Jiang, God of Thunder has been waiting for you. The Chinese man who was tied up beside God of Thunder said respectfully. Mr. Jiang. Mr. Jiang. Then the top masters of the Never-Setting Sun Trade Union, the Apennine Mafia, and many other underground forces bowed to him. There was even more silence outside the arena. The moment the three words Mr. Jiang appeared, the entire atmosphere seemed to freeze. This name was enough to make everyone feel suffocated and fearful. Many women covered their mouths with their white and tender hands, and widened their beautiful eyes. From the Great Wall to the first ridge, everyone bowed in an orderly manner. It was like welcoming an emperor in ancient times. They were only short of shouting, "Long live the emperor!" Bing Bing. Mother Yi turned her head to look at Yi Bing. She had already seen everything clearly. Just now her line of sight was blocked by someone. Now that she bowed, her line of sight couldn't be any better. What was going on? Chapter 434. Jiang Xiao casually glanced around with a cold light. This was his habit. However, with this glance, he could see everything in the distance. He couldn't help but fix his eyes on Yi Bing. There was a smile in his eyes, but there was a hint of contemplation under this smile. Yi Bing seemed to be very surprised to see him here. She blinked twice, confused and surprised. No way, it shouldn't be him. Yi Bing also found it hard to predict. If her mother knew that the classmate she had caught was the world-famous Jiang Luoxia, she didn't know how her mother would react. She didn't want her family to have any special opinions about this. Why not? It's him. It's exactly the same. He's Mr. Jiang? Yi Bing's mother was not an ordinary woman. She came from an extraordinary family. Although she had moved abroad for a while, she had heard a lot of news from her relatives and friends in China. How could she not know Mr. Jiang? Mom, you've got the wrong person. As Yi Bing was talking, Jiang Xiao turned and walked in their direction. The man next to him said, Mr. Jiang, Thunder God has been waiting for you for a long time. The area over there has been completely blocked. Don't worry, no one will disturb you. He motioned for Jiang Xiao to hurry up. He had been waiting since before noon, and now the sun was about to set. He didn't know if Jiang Xiao was deliberately playing a psychological battle to make Thunder God wait for him. However, the person who made others wait was also waiting himself. Jiang Xiao ignored the man and walked toward Yi Bing in the crowd. Yi Bing couldn't help but stare. She didn't know what kind of expression to show. What a coincidence. Auntie, you also came to the capital to play? It's really you. Bing Bing said no. Yi Bing gave her mother a dead fish eye and let her understand it herself. Yi Bing's mother said in surprise, You're Mr. Jiang? Jiang Xiao said, Auntie, you call me Mr. I don't dare. Aren't you afraid of being punished to write a guarantee? Jiang Xiao's mother burst into laughter. Originally, there was some estrangement and distance between them, but because of one sentence from Jiang Xiu, they were brought back to the past. Back then in the living room of their home in Jiang City, their relationship seemed to have become close all of a sudden. How would I dare to give in to you now? You have such great achievements now. Jiang Xiu's gaze fell on Yi Bing. He didn't know why this snake had come here today. You're here to stand for me? 3 years ago on the West Lake, Jiang Xiu's Zeng clan had severely injured her. At that time, the demon snake god's cultivation level had only been that of a lower god. In the past 3 years, the world had changed rapidly. So many strong people had appeared. Before this, no one knew where the thunder god was. Now it was hard to say how strong Yi Bing was. Jiang Xiu believed that there were many demon immortals like this. He vaguely remembered that the snake demon god had once said that the humans only had the opportunity to rule the world because they were lucky. There was a prophecy that they would overthrow the human rule in the future. Yi Bing said, "What are you guys doing here? Why are you making such a big fuss?" Jiang Xiu smiled. "Take good care of Auntie." "Hey, don't go. Tell me clearly." As they spoke, Jiang Xiu had already turned and left. Yi Bing was so angry that she stomped her foot and said fiercely, "What's so great about that? If you don't say it, we'll find out later." The way the people around them looked at Yi Bing and her mother changed. These two were Jiang Luoxia's old friends? Many people immediately racked their brains to find a way to talk to them and build a relationship with them so that they could get on board with Jiang Luo. "Madam, do you know Mr. Jiang?" Wu Zhenhai immediately tried to curry favor with her. "Of course. I watched him grow up." Wow, this wasn't an ordinary relationship. Yi Bing didn't expect her mother to be such a person. She couldn't help but cover her face. It seemed like her mother didn't like her back then. She even forced her to write a guarantee and forbade them from seeing each other. Besides, they were already in high school. How could she say that she watched him grow up? "Mom, when did I become so vain?" Yi Bing's mother raised her chin slightly. Her eyes were filled with pride. "Mr. Jiang, Thunder God has been waiting for a long time. Hua Nation can't have such an attitude if they want to negotiate," the Hua Nation man next to Thunder God said. However, Jiang Xiu didn't even look at him. How could this kind of ant-like laughingstock catch Jiang Luoxi's eye? In front of him was the Great Wall, which stretched endlessly on the mountains. After the shocking changes in the world, the Great Wall had also changed. The spiritual energy was very rich and merged with the auspicious clouds in the sky. The Great Wall looked more solemn and dignified. It also had the aura of an immortal. In the depths of the Great Wall, a man stood in the mist. "Mr. Jiang, be careful. Thunder God's strength is very terrifying." Many nosy Hua Nation cultivators had also gone to watch the battle between some of the god-level experts overseas. Although Jiang Xiu was strong, Thunder God's ranking was still higher than his. Seeing Jiang Xiu's back disappear into the distance, many martial artists' faces were covered with a layer of worry. Boom! A thunderclap exploded in the sky. The clear sky was suddenly filled with thunderclaps. This was definitely not a sign of rain, but the clamor of the Thunder God. The stronger the expert, the more they knew how terrifying this thunderclap was. It was completely man-made. The powerful lightning tore apart the space. "Jiang Lu, I've been waiting for you for a long time." It was actually speaking in the divine language. The man in the distance was very tall. He had the perfect body shape of a European. His shoulders were wide and his legs were long. Lightning flashed around his body. His whole body seemed to be glowing. Jiang Xiu had already walked to the end of the Great Wall. He seemed to be in a hurry, but he was actually as fast as lightning. Boom! Another thunderous sound rang out. And the lightning was even more intense than before. The momentum was more than 10 times stronger than before. Jiang Xiu's aura continued to rise with every step he took. "Oh my god, Jiang Luoxia can control lightning?" Jiang Luoxia in front of him had lightning flashing above his head. His long hair fluttered like flames above his head. He had already divinized. His clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look like a god or a demon. His momentum was even stronger. Jiang Luoxia never lost to others. Moreover, he never admitted defeat. "Not bad, not bad. You two met on the Great Wall. You're worthy of this world." Judging from his appearance, Thunder God seemed to be older than Jiang Xiu. He was about 40 years old. In today's world, there are only a few higher gods. If you go any further, you'll reach the end of the gods. After transcending, you can roam the universe freely. Ever since I awakened, no one has been able to keep up with me. You're the one who's been the closest to me. His tone was extremely arrogant. It was as if he thought that Jiang Xiu could catch up to him, because of Jiang Xiu's glory. He placed himself in a higher position. He seemed to be praising Jiang Xiu, but in reality, he was thinking too highly of himself. His eyes were silver white. They shone with a resplendent light, and were filled with fighting spirit. He stood there like a pole. Clouds floated above his head, and his feet stepped on the great wall. He looked like a god. Even from far away, Jiang Xiu could hear the heavenly lightning bloodline surging in his body like an ocean. Fierce winds blew, and from time to time, stormy waves would rise. The divine power in his body was as thick as magma in a volcano, and his divine will was as solid as a boulder. No matter where he was, Jiang Xiu could tell that the thunder god in front of him was the strongest opponent he had ever faced. He could fight him. Unfortunately, you're still just a sun god. Although the lightning was a divine punishment, and was extremely powerful, it was still limited to the level of the sun god. It hadn't formed a complete godhood, so it didn't have an advantage in level. Facing Jiang Luoxia, who had been cultivating for more than 3,000 years, and had experienced countless battles, what were his chances of winning? He shook his head. After all, it was difficult to meet a real opponent on Earth. It's just that the sun god can't make me excited. Come on, let's fight. Arrogant. Dazzling light burst out of the thunder god's silver eyes. This was supposed to be a conversation, not a decisive battle. The thunder god should have suppressed Jiang Xiu with his power, and subdued him without fighting. He should have taken the lead at the negotiation table, and then further suppressed him. He didn't expect that the thunder god would want to fight to the death as soon as he opened his mouth. At the same time, on the Diaoyu platform, the negotiators from both sides had also entered the venue. This negotiation was destined to end before it even began. The big boss and the others were in another conference room not far from the Diaoyu platform. There was also a fierce argument going on. The big boss's dominance had declined at the last minute. In addition, the matter he supported this time was not recognized by the public. Everyone unanimously wanted to sell their interests to keep the peace. I don't agree. Chapter 435. The big boss stood up from his seat firmly and firmly opposed the idea. If he followed the trend, of course he still had a high chance of being re-elected. However, the loss of benefits would make him unable to face the future. Therefore, he had to persevere until the end. I object. We can't let what happened more than 100 years ago happen again. The man surnamed Yi said. What if we don't agree? In the current situation, do we have to wait until the other side conquers us by force before we can see the situation clearly? It will be too late by then. He slammed the table excitedly. Most of the people around also agreed. Now the opponent was the whole world, which made people feel sincerely depressed. No matter how fast they developed, it was impossible to go against the whole world. If they insisted on going their own way, the result was self-evident. When the time comes, we won't just lose Huadong, Shanghai, and other places, but all of them. When all of them fall, how can we explain it to the people and to history? The big boss said. In short, I object. I firmly object. In order to protect the dignity of the country, so what if we are enemies with the whole world? I would rather die standing than live kneeling. The man surnamed Yi laughed. How bold. You can die standing, but don't drag so many people down with you. What's more, things are not as serious as you said. They are called human rights. Do you think those people are like Jiang Luoxia, a devil with bloody hands? The big boss said, Jiang Luoxia can win. Win? Everyone present secretly shook their heads. No matter how strong Jiang Luoxia was, how could he defeat Thunder God? Thunder God had never been defeated since his debut, and had always been ranked first on the divine list. No one could surpass him. But then, everyone realized a problem. The man surnamed Ye's face changed greatly. What did you say? Win. You mean Jiang Luoxia still wants to fight with Thunder God? How dare he? Thunder God asked him to meet with him to give him face. How dare he make trouble? This time, the venue was in chaos. They were begging at the negotiating table and pretending to be obedient. You turned around and wanted to fight with others. This was more than just a hindrance. It was simply destroying the negotiation and disregarding the whole country. Jiang Luoxia has no discipline. Who told him to do this? Did we agree? The core member surnamed Yi was furious. He stood up with a whoosh and his whole body was trembling. Make him stop disrespecting the Thunder God immediately. If he wants to die, no one can stop him. But don't implicate us. What national hero? He's just a jinx, a great jinx. You're harming others and yourself. Tell Jiang Luoxia to stop? Who would do that? That was an ambitious and ruthless person, a tyrant. If he didn't agree with him, he would wipe out an entire family. He couldn't wait for Thunder God to kill Jiang Luoxia. Once he was killed, everything would be over. I support his fight against Thor. The big boss said. Are you crazy? Many people present knew that Jiang Luoxia had a close relationship with the big boss, but he was too reckless. He was simply joking with the future of the country. Looking at the big boss in front of them, everyone felt that he was both familiar and unfamiliar. Familiar because he was as persistent as always, but unfamiliar because he was so reckless. The big boss's eyes were firm and bright. This was a strange world, but it was also the best era for development. He saw hope. He saw hope riding the wind and rising to the sky. Personal dignity must be protected, and the dignity of the country must be protected even more. The Great Wall is there. His voice was low and powerful, shaking people's hearts. Crazy, crazy. I suggest that we vote on this matter. This wasn't a one-sided opinion. When the 7 core members couldn't come to a decision, they had to vote. I object. I object too. All of a sudden, 3 hands were raised in opposition. The eyes of the central official surnamed Yi turned red as he glanced at the remaining 4 people. In the past, they would do whatever the big boss said, but today was different. In the face of life and death, no one would blindly follow him. As long as one more person raised his hand, then he would win. This would also be the early simulation of the next session. It was of great significance. Another person slowly raised his hand and said, I also object. Okay, for votes now. The core member surnamed Yi shouted excitedly. The other 2 saw that the situation was hopeless and raised their hands as well. 6 votes, 6 votes. Everyone objects. The big boss sat there calmly. His eyes were bright and flashing, and he was as calm as a mountain. It was as if the vote had nothing to do with him. He slowly opened his mouth and said, If you object, that's your business. Can you stop Jiang Luoxia from doing what he wants to do? Whoosh! The core member surnamed Yi was trembling with excitement. Suddenly, a basin of cold water was poured over him. What? The other core members had strange expressions on their faces. Yes, who could stop Jiang Luoxia from doing what he wanted to do? Who would dare to be his enemy? They had put the cart before the horse. After all this time, it had turned into a joke. Isn't Jiang Luoxia a citizen of China? Does he even care about the country? The big boss said, Can you represent the country? The core member surnamed Ye's anger rushed to his throat, but he forcefully suppressed it. For a long time he was speechless. His face was flushed red, and he was extremely angry. In the negotiation room, both sides were arguing. Of course, most of the time, it was the other side that was struggling. The first thing was to announce Jiang Luoxia's evil deeds. In fact, the overseas forces had already taken the initiative to spread the news in the country. The news spread like a hurricane, and it spread throughout the entire country. Today, everyone who watched the news knew about it. Those who didn't watch the news also heard about it. Far away in Jiangnan, Cheng Lingran was working. When she saw the news on her computer and the current international situation, she was shocked and couldn't react for a long time. Director Cheng, the document. Seeing that Cheng Lingran was in a daze, the secretary waiting opposite her reminded her. I'll make a call. Cheng Lingran's mind was blank. She didn't know that such a big thing had happened. She didn't know how powerful Jiang Xiu's knife was. She only knew that the consequences were that he had become the public enemy of the world. Susu, have you seen the news? Something happened with the minor repairs. Cheng Lingsu was in the biological group, so she received the news earlier and more specific than Cheng Lingran. She said nervously, I saw it. The situation is more serious than we thought. It said that the consequences may be excessive division. It's hard to imagine. Jiang Xiu might be in trouble. He's too arrogant. I knew that sooner or later, he would get into big trouble. Cheng Lingran seemed to have lost all her strength. Will there be a turnaround? Susu's face was very pale at the moment. Her mind was full of the scattered past with Jiang Xiu. In her heart, there was always a thought buried deep in her heart. She felt that she wasn't a vain woman like Jiang Xiu thought. She felt that she treated Jiang Xiu that way because she was young and frivolous. She had never looked down on Jiang Xiu. Maybe she was flaunting herself and finding excuses for herself. But no matter what, that was what she thought. It was just that she didn't have the courage and couldn't put down her face to tell Jiang Xiu these things. Besides, she thought that no matter what she said, Jiang Xiu wouldn't believe her. No, there's no chance. She didn't know what she meant by no chance was because of Jiang Xiu's situation, or because she didn't have a chance to tell Jiang Xiu about this matter. At this moment, she wanted to say that she understood her own desire. It was up to her whether she said it or not, and it was up to him to believe it or not. But she didn't want Jiang Xiu to leave this world with prejudice against her. But it seemed that there was no chance. No. A gloomy mood spread between the two of them. Emotions could be contagious and could be expanded. Under the influence of internal injuries, everything was black and white, and the world would become meaningless. She didn't know where the feelings came from, nor did she know where they came from. Buddhism said that the 500 glances in the previous life were exchanged for a brush with each other in this life. They had appeared in each other's lives since they were young. What kind of fate was this? Ups and downs, separation and reunion. Sister, I regret it. Cheng Lingran was stunned. Her mind was in a mess. Sister, do you have a way to save him? Although she knew that Cheng Lingran definitely didn't have a way, she still asked this question out of habit because she had relied on her since they were young. Wait, maybe there's still a chance. Cheng Lingran remembered a report about her former schoolmate, Long Yingqing, on the Capital University's website a few days ago. Maybe she could help. That person had now climbed to the 17th place on the divine list. The strong were lonely. The stronger one was, the more tired one's heart would be. This road would also become lonelier. When one reached the peak, only his shadow could follow him. The higher one reached, the lonelier one would be. Therefore, the enemy was the best friend. Thunder God had this feeling, but killing such a friend was the source of his rare happiness. Chapter 436. Arrogant brat, let's see what else you have to say after I kill you. The Thunder God coldly snorted, his gaze as sharp as a blade. As the sound of his voice faded, he directly punched out. Rumble! A violent whistling sound could be heard in the air as a gigantic fist force gushed out from the Thunder God's fist. In an instant, it arced through the air, tearing apart the clouds that covered the picturesque Great Wall. A huge fist rushed out of the smoke and clouds. Before the fist arrived, the fist intent arrived first. The smoke and clouds in front of Jiang Xiu were crushed by the sharp whistling sound. The huge and magnificent fist intent shrouded and pushed forward from afar. If it was an ordinary person standing in front of him, his body would have already been blasted apart by the fist intent before it even arrived. Welcome. In response, Jiang Xiu snorted lightly as he spoke. Every word and action of his contained an ancient charm. This was the habit of many people in the immortal martial continent, fusing together with the elegance of the experts from that world. His fist shook as he punched out. Dense amounts of God force condensed into a silver fist light that shot out from his fist. However, the clouds in front of him seemed to contain boundless amounts of energy. Abruptly, a powerful fist shadow rushed out, rushing towards his opponent's fist. The clouds in front of him were clearly surging, but when they collided, it was as though two planets had collided. A muffled boom rang out, causing the clouds in the sky to tremble. The aftershock of the collision blasted out in all directions, emitting crackling sounds. The momentum of the collision was extremely shocking. Jiang Xiu's fist force wasn't merely derived from his dermic energy. It also contained the profoundness of the immortal martial path. In fact, brute force could be imitated. The fist light violently collided, penetrating through the clouds. Thunder God's expression changed as he involuntarily retreated. This was something that had never happened before. Thunder God's spiritual power was innate, just like how he was born to control thunder and lightning. His spiritual power was far beyond ordinary people. This was the first time he had met someone who could beat him in terms of spiritual power. As he retreated, Jiang Xiu's body only swayed slightly, and then he flashed over. The contempt in Thunder God's eyes finally disappeared. From the beginning of the Battle of Aura, Jiang Xiu was not the slightest bit weaker. It could even be said that Jiang Xiu was even more domineering. This person's thirst for blood and brutality had an invisible impact on people's hearts, including this punch. It was extremely valiant. Thunder God's eyes narrowed. He punched out with his left fist again. With a boom, he directly collided with the incoming fist light, directly dispersing it. Jiang Xiu punched out, but he had to neutralize it with 2 punches. In terms of mentality, he was definitely at a great disadvantage. But when he raised his right hand, the white lightning runes on his arm lit up at the same time. At the same time, lightning flashed as he punched out towards Jiang Xiu. Thunder God finally used the lightning runes. The lightning in Jiang Xiu's hand was extremely dazzling. It was as though he could grab the lightning in his hand. The divine inscriptions on Jiang Xiu's arm didn't light up. Instead, the silver-white light on his fist contained a red flame. Boom! Another punch. This time, the two of them were very close to each other, and there was even lightning and flames wreaking havoc within. Under the collision of their strengths, the violent waves were like a tsunami that burst forth between them. Whoosh whoosh, the force spread out, blowing away the smoke and clouds on the ground, revealing the smooth bluestone tiles. Roar! A terrifying dragon's roar resounded through the air. Second evolved form of Dragonfire. Jiang Xiu's Dragonfire was only at the elementary level, but when he killed Jujiu and Nan, he absorbed the second evolved form of Wind and Fire. He couldn't refine it, so he used it to strengthen the Dragonfire, allowing it to enter the second evolved form. Third evolved form of Sky Thunder. Feeling the power of the lightning, Jiang Xiu's heart trembled. Abruptly, the magic energy in his body was released. Under the stimulation of his immortal martial arts, the super-strong ability was forcefully met with steel. Boom boom. Jiang Xiu's figure flashed, and the lightning transformed into lightning bolts that flashed over. Thunder God roared, once again using his fist as a guide. He punched towards Jiang Xiu's blurry figure. Lightning flashed, hundreds of meters long, almost tearing the sky apart. This was the true power of Thunder God. He believed that if Jiang Xiu could destroy a city, so could he. The terrifying lethality of the lightning was like the anger of the heavens, punishing the mortals of the mortal world. No, it's still not the complete evolved form of Sky Thunder. It should still be one step away. If it was the complete first law of Sky Thunder, then Thunder God should have condensed a complete divinity, breaking away from the limitations of the Sun God, and becoming an Earth God. If that was the case, Jiang Xiu would have no hope. But right now, Thunder God was still one step away. Just now, Jiang Xiu's divine body was hit by the lightning. If he didn't dodge quickly, he would have been injured. Looking at the terrifying lightning in the sky, Jiang Xiu already knew the taste of its power. He was absolutely not interested in using his body to resist. The overwhelming power of the lightning seemed to have enveloped the world, making it impossible for Jiang Xiu to escape. Jiang Luoxia's cold eyes swept over, carrying a terrifying cold light. He softly spat out a word. Hong! The divine runes on his arm lit up. As if it came from ancient times, it resounded in this part of the world. It seemed to be far away in the horizon, yet close in front of him. As the first sound of heaven and earth resounded, the setting sun on Badaling suddenly lit up. It was as if dawn had broken, and a scorching sun rose into the sky. At the same time, Jiang Xiu's forehead flashed with a strong light, and he used his fingers as a blade. The bright blade light flashed in the air, condensing into a blade in the air. It disappeared from sight in a flash, and when it flashed again, there was a sizzling sound. What? Thunder God couldn't believe his eyes. They were almost popping out. The bright blade light actually split the lightning that tore the sky into two. That feeling was like a person rubbing a skyscraper with their fingers, and the skyscraper actually collapsed from the rubbing. How could this be? The scorching sun rose into the sky. This was a part of the world that belonged to Jiang Xiao. In his world, his power had an absolute advantage. This was true for everything. Whether it was the sword light of heaven and earth or the sky thunder that was infinitely close to completion, they were all the same in his eyes. Unless you were stronger than this earth, for example, the earth god. Without the advantage of the realm, Jiang Xiao was the master in his world. Thunder God, your time of death has come. With a roar resounding through the world, Jiang Luoxia's long hair fluttered. His body flashed. 1 flash, 2 flashes, 3 flashes, and he flew over. In the blink of an eye, he had already slashed the blade light from the sky. This blade cut across the sky and extended infinitely. Boom. Boom. Facing such a blade, Thunder God's face was extremely dignified. He sighed. His golden hair fluttered slowly, and his body crackled. Thunder God's appearance. At this moment, Thunder God's world-shaking Thunder God's body was about to appear. He was finally going to use his trump card. According to legend, Thunder God's appearance was only used when he was in the early stage of awakening. At that time, the power was simply explosive. The whole sky of Halden City was filled with lightning, constantly tearing the dark sky apart. Since then, Thunder God's strength had far surpassed his opponents. There was no need to use it anymore. Today was the first time since the awakening. Rip. Rip. Bolts of lightning flashed across the sky mercilessly. His entire body turned into energy particles of lightning. In the void, his entire body seemed to have turned into lightning particles. His entire body became transparent. It was as if he was no longer a body of flesh and blood. Instead, he was an energy body formed by lightning and lightning. My God, what is that? Jiang Luoxia's ability to summon another sun had already been spread among many people. When everyone saw it, they were naturally very shocked, and also extremely terrified when they thought about it. Where did this sun come from? He didn't know if the 2 suns would affect the orbit of the planet in the universe. He didn't know what kind of biological effects the heat emitted by the other 2 suns would have on Earth. But after all, it had appeared several times. However, the appearance of the legendary Thor was the first time since the Thor became a god. It was as if the Thunder God had become a source of thunder instead of a person. The visual impact was too great. It was as if he was born as a god. Now people finally understood why he was called the Thunder God. The God of Thunder's hair had changed from golden to silver. His skin was emitting a dazzling light under the lightning. His aura had completely changed. Is this deification? Thunder God had been in a mortal state before, and now he was in his deified state. This deified state is the best in the Xianwu continent. Chapter 437. The Thunder God's bloodline was so outstanding that it surprised Jiang Xiao. It was an extremely pure heavenly Thunder God physique, without a trace of impurities. The natural growth of a pure elemental body could reach the level of a heavenly god. In other words, if there were no accidents, the Thunder God could grow from a young body to a heavenly god. Although this level of talent couldn't be considered a top genius in the immortal martial continent, it was still outstanding. If his comprehension was high, he could definitely be called a genius. With such talent, it was no wonder that he was so outstanding on this planet after awakening. The aura of the Thunder God in front of him had completely changed. Every move of his was filled with flashes of lightning, full of power. Any matter that approached him was instantly turned into ashes. Countless people below looked up at the sky. Amidst the mist, the human figure in the form of lightning was also very obvious. Ordinary people couldn't see it at all. They only felt that the movement in the sky was terrifying. The Jiaoyu platform had already sent a special department to set up defenses in the area. The person in charge of this work was East Dragon, who had witnessed Jiang Xiao slaughtering the 7 gods in East China. But compared to the battle in front of him, it was on a completely different level. Will he lose? The news he received was that the Diaoyu platform had admitted defeat and wanted to compensate. Jiang Luoxia's meeting with the Thunder God could be considered as surrendering, but also as lowering his head and admitting defeat. However, Jiang Luoxia still made a move. This caused him to be shocked. He was incomparably excited. This was the Jiang Luoxia in his mind. He had descended from the 9 mysteries and cleansed the heavens. He was unrestrained and unrestrained. How could such an ambitious and ruthless person lower his head to others? He would rather die standing than live kneeling. But the scene in front of him made him lose confidence. The Thunder God was like a bolt of lightning after divinization. How could Jiang Xiu kill lightning? With that transparent body, even if it was pierced by a sharp sword, it wouldn't be affected in the slightest. Jiang Luoxia will lose for sure. The person from the triad shouted excitedly in Japanese. Rip. A dazzling bolt of lightning flashed across the daytime sky. This was a celestial phenomenon that had never been seen before. Everyone below had a solemn look on their faces. This was a shocking battle that would decide the fate of the entire world. Finally, it was going to be a life and death battle. Many of the Hua Nation cultivators present looked solemn. From the looks of it, Jiang Luoxia had already used his trump card, while the Thunder God had used his trump card later. He was at a psychological disadvantage. If Jiang Luoxia was defeated, it would be a heavy blow to the entire Hua Nation. Rip. In the void, the Thunder God gently flicked his finger, and lightning flashed out, tearing through the sky and traversing hundreds of miles. His face was grave and stern, and his aura was astonishing. With every movement, thunder and lightning wreaked havoc. The Thunder God's name was indeed true. He was Lei and Lei was him. Jiang Luoxia, defeated. Thunder God pointed at the sky a few times, and was very satisfied with the deterrence brought about by his powerful destructive power. He glanced at Jiang Xiu and lightly spat out a domineering sentence. At the same time, lightning flashed on his fingertips from time to time. Rip. Powerful lightning bolts flashed towards Jiang Xiu. Swish. Jiang Xiu also swung his hand. At first it was fast, but suddenly, as if he was carrying something more than 10,000 pounds, its speed suddenly decreased. After a rumbling sound, the flying knife shot out. The flying knife shook violently in the void, as if it couldn't bear the weight. Jiang Xiu was shocked. Before the Thunder God's deification, his thunder was limited to the 3 evolutions of the Yang God's heavenly thunder, but after deification, it suddenly increased. Although it wasn't an earth god, its power was infinitely close. The imperfection of the heavenly thunder was compensated by his heavenly thunder divine body. It could be said that the heavenly thunder had transcended this world. The Yang God against the earth god. Unless Jiang Xiu had an incredible Dharma artifact, he would definitely have a chance. Jiang Xiu was afraid of ordinary thunder, but the power of the thunder in front of him clearly felt that the thunder in front of him had transcended the limits of his world, and was releasing its full power. At this moment, the lightning flashed on the flying knife. Boom. There was a sound like muffled thunder in the void, as if the millstone between heaven and earth was being rotated. The 2 powerful forces collided, and the flying knife made a sound like glass cracking. The broken pieces of light fell from the flying knife, and turned into bright light sand. As they moved forward, they all collapsed. The flying knife was shattered in front of the thunder. The sky illuminates the light and the setting sun hides. At this moment, not only did Jiang Xiu's figure not retreat, but he also looked at the thunder. Jiang Xiu's world law formed by the first sound of heaven and earth, and the longevity rune was incomplete. It was reasonable to lose to an almost perfect law with an incomplete law. Therefore, the moment Jiang Xiu released the flying knife, he knew that the chance of winning was not big, so he used the escape technique. This was the first time he used the escape light on Earth. Tianqing School's top escape technique, the Skywalker. Walking toward the light, where was the immortal trace? His figure seemed endless as he walked towards the lightning. It was as if in this instant, a century had passed. It was also as if in the blink of an eye, his body brushed against the light coming from the front. When the light shone on his body, there was a strange refraction, as if he was watching chopsticks being inserted into water. The next moment, his body was completely submerged. There was no trace of him. He got the lightning, but it flashed past the place where he was just now and fell into the air. Where is he? Thunder God was shocked. Jiang Xiu's whole body disappeared in front of him. He suddenly looked up, and a trace of shock flashed in his eyes. A sharp flying knife was shooting from the sky. Sly way. The flying knife was too fast. When Thunder God looked up, the flying knife had already pierced through his body. He got hit. Countless people saw that Thunder God's mind was pierced by the knife light. Thunder God's body also shook, but his head that was tilted back quickly supported itself. There was a big hole in his face. It was pitch black inside, like the universe. The surrounding lightning kept flashing, and the wound healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ha! When Jiang Xiu saw this scene, he couldn't help but frown. When facing such an enemy whose attack was stronger than his, he couldn't break through his defense. When facing such an enemy, the only way to deal with him was to use a formation. However, Jiang Luoxia was careless and didn't set up a formation on the Great Wall in advance. If he set up a formation now, not to mention that the divine power in his body wasn't enough to support it, Thunder God wouldn't give him such a chance. Jiang Luoxia, today is the day you die. Haha. Jiang Xiu looked up and laughed. His fighting spirit was boiling. Every time he was on the verge of death, he would feel excited and crazy. Crazy people always had a crazy mentality. You want to kill me? It's still too early for you. Let's fight. Thunder God shouted angrily. You're courting death. A bolt of lightning appeared in his hand, and with a boom, he threw it at Jiang Xiu. This time the area of effect was even larger. Jiang Xiu once again used the heavenly illumination, and his figure appeared in the distant horizon. So. Throwing knives shot out like raindrops. Jiang Xiu's flying knives were inconceivably fast. What was more fatal was that by the time he noticed, the flying knives had already pierced through his body. This time, he was even more miserable than the last time. His body was riddled with holes, but in the next second, after a flash of lightning, the wounds healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. How? The people below were already dumbfounded. The power of Jiang Luoxia's flying knives was so great that it was ranked second. In the Battle of East China, he killed the 7 gods with a single flying knife. Now he actually pierced through Thunder God, and Thunder God was unharmed. I'm afraid Thunder God already has an immortal body. He's still not dead even like this. Many people sighed. Many Hua Nation cultivators sincerely thought of a famous saying. If there is a jade, why should there be a jade? You won't be able to kill me. Jiang Luoxia, you're going to lose for sure. Thunder God's eyes flashed with terrifying lightning. With a whoosh he closed in on Jiang Xiu. He wanted to close the distance and not let Jiang Xiu use that strange escape technique again. Thunder God was even more terrifying when he was close. Just the electricity on his body was unbearable. Is that so? Whoosh. Whoosh. Jiang Xiu also rushed up and punched Thunder God's body. His fist directly smashed into Thunder God's body and directly sent him flying. His body bent down and flashed behind Thunder God, and he punched again. Boom. 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 Thunder God's body was like a sandbag in the sky, being beaten up by Jiang Xiu. With 3,000 years of combat experience and countless immortal martial arts, even if his attack and defense were inferior to his opponent, he could completely crush his opponent with his skills. Wow. The people below were in an uproar. Thunder God was being beaten. Chapter 438. In the sky, Thunder God could be seen being beaten up by Jiang Xiu. Although the destructive power of such an attack was far less than that of the flying dagger, it was still embarrassing. Many people who thought that Jiang Luoxia would definitely lose were dumbfounded. Now Thunder God was being suppressed by Jiang Luoxia. It was too unexpected. The people who had made up their minds to see Jiang Luoxia being killed were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. How could this be? The people from the triad who were shouting fiercely were speechless. Rip. Jiang Xiu's figure flashed behind the Thunder God. He held a shining long saber in his hand, and slashed at the Thunder God's waist. The thunder god had been suppressed and beaten for so long. The anger in his heart had reached the extreme. Roar! He finally let out an angry roar, and the lightning in his entire body exploded with a loud bang. A powerful force mixed with the lightning, and Jiang Xiu felt an irresistible force pushing towards him. The blade he slashed out, and he himself, were all flipped over. The difference in strength was revealed in the face of this eruption. Jiang Xiu, who had been sent flying, turned into a sharp blade light that flashed across the sky. Is he going to use the sword formation? The furious thunder god looked up at the sky. The Chinese beside thunder god had done a thorough analysis of Jiang Luoxia. Jiang Luoxia had used the sword formation when he was in the Annihilation sect. It's useless. You can't kill me. Although thunder god didn't know the specific gap between their realms, he could intuitively feel that Jiang Xiu's strength was not enough to kill him unless there was a qualitative change. His intuition was very accurate. Ordinary experts had this kind of judgment. Of course, Jiang Xiu also knew that, except for large-scale tactical arrays, this kind of saber array that could enhance power could only be used by tens of thousands of people of the same level. After the thunder god was deified, he could almost piece together the precepts and could almost be regarded as an earth god. The gap between the realms was definitely not something that could be made up by immortal martial arts. It was said that such immortal martial arts did exist, but even the top-secret techniques in Tianqing school did not have such power. So, thunder god's expression changed. Could it be that Jiang Luoxia wanted to escape? Jiang Xiu actually turned around and left. Rip. The thunder god transformed into a bolt of lightning and chased after them. From time to time, he would shoot out bolts of lightning. The sky was filled with flashes of lightning. One after another, they chased after another, all the way to the east. I can't see anything. How did the fight end up in the east? Ha ha ha, Jiang Luoxia must have been chased away. The Japanese martial artist who had been yelling ferociously shouted excitedly. That direction is. Donglong's eyes suddenly widened. They were now heading towards the Diaoyu platform. Oh my god, don't be reckless. The two gods were fighting. Fortunately, they were high enough. Otherwise, if the thunder god's lightning fell on the ground, the entire Diaoyu platform would be destroyed. It should be known that the Diaoyu platform was the highest symbol of the country. If it was destroyed, it would be a complete loss of face. Unless the thunder god died here. Quick. Countless people chased after them from below, afraid to miss this earth-shattering battle. Where do you think you're going? Jiang Xiu's speed in the sky was extremely fast, but Thunder God's speed was even faster. At Jiang Xiu's level, he couldn't use a long-distance escape technique. The distance between the two was getting closer and closer. However, the two were too fast. In the blink of an eye, the Diaoyu platform was right in front of them. On top of a tall building, a white-haired man stood in the air. His hair was very long and thin, but it shone brightly. His eyebrows were as white as feathers, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. His thin lips were curved in a smile. Jiang Luoxia, that's all. Is he trying to escape? This man was Silver Wing. How could he miss such a battle? He's relying on all kinds of tricks. His weak body can't withstand a single blow from the Thunder God. He could not help but shake his head. It's useless. He's just struggling. Sir, do you mean that Jiang Luoxia is going to lose? An old European man asked. He's not going to lose. He's going to die. In the eyes of Silver Wing, Jiang Luoxia was like an agile child. He was about 12 or 13 years old, and was developing into a man. However, when faced with an adult man in the prime of his life, although he could rely on his agility to fight for a few rounds, he would be defeated as soon as the adult man punched him. The difference in strength between the two was too great. Is that so? The old European man laughed. In his opinion, this was to be expected. There was one more thing that the old man did not understand, and that was that the Thunder God would not let Jiang Luoxia live, because Jiang Luoxia was the only person who could threaten the Thunder God. In this world, there could only be one Earth God. Both of them were superior gods. It was possible for one of them to take this step first. That position would be the throne, and the world would belong to whoever took it. Of course, the Thunder God wanted to kill Jiang Xiu, a potential enemy. Long Yingqing was also paying attention. She was in an old attic, standing on the corner of the roof like a goddess. Her clothes fluttered in the wind, but her face was serious. She could see that Jiang Xiu was in a bad situation. At this time her phone rang. She habitually picked it up. Hello. Her beautiful eyes were still following the two figures in the sky. Hello, is this Long Yingqing? I am Cheng Lingran. Long Yingqing was stunned. She had not heard this name for a long time, but she had not forgotten it, and would never forget it. This was because Jiang Xiu had once angered Jiang Xiu because of her. This was a very special woman. Oh, it's you, Cheng Lingran said. I took the liberty to call you, but I really have no other choice. I want to, just say it. Long Yingqing was also very cold to people. She was arrogant in front of everyone, like a princess. Except for the one flying in the sky, she also liked to be direct. I want you to help me with minor repairs. Long Yingqing never thought that Cheng Lingran would make such a request. She could do anything. This was her confidence. But only this matter. She had always said that she would form an alliance with Jiang Xiu, but when there was a real chance, she could do nothing. Jiang Xiu and the god of thunder were both high gods, while she was only a mid-god. Although it seemed that she was only a dozen or so places away from the two, in reality, the difference was like heaven and earth. You called me just for this? Cheng Lingran said. Yes, please help me with minor repairs. Long Yingqing said. Do you still have contact with him? Cheng Lingran fell silent. There was no more contact. From a certain point of view, the two of them had already broken off and drawn a clear line between them. There was no reply from the other side. Long Yingqing knew that of course it was a no, so she said, I can't help either. No one in the world can help. Yi Bing's eyes were also fixed on the sky. Yi Mu had already begun to shout. I can't see anything. What's the situation? Why are they chasing over? It seems like they went to Diaoyu platform. Mom, are we still going to chase over and see? Of course, that's your classmate. Many people drove in the direction of Diaoyu platform. In order to watch the battle, they were quite desperate. In the office of Diaoyu platform, everyone watching through the satellite saw that the two people had disappeared. Just as they were about to ask about the situation, the secretary outside ran in horror and said, Not good, they're coming over here. Should we evacuate urgently? The big boss said, No need. He sat very steadily and didn't even move from his position. But, on the other side of the table, news of the battle between the two sides came from time to time. It was said that Jiang Xiu had been chased to the point that he had nowhere to run, and had fled to Diaoyu platform. He probably wanted to use diplomatic surrender to save his life. Now not only Huadong, Shanghai, but also Jiang Luoxia's Jiangnan. What? The Chinese representative stood up angrily. His eyes were red. This was the most developed area. Impossible, absolutely impossible. It doesn't matter if you don't agree. When Thunder God kills Jiang Luoxia, it might not be just these 3 places. It might be 4 places, 5 places. In the sky, Jiang Xiu's forehead flashed with a strong light. His divine sense spread out in an instant. Suddenly his eyes opened and a murderous look appeared on his cold face. Sure enough, it's here. In a palace-like secret room, the doors and windows were tightly shut. The outside was covered with yellow talismans. Usually 1 talisman was enough. However, the outside of this secret room was covered with yellow talismans. The talismans were very old. They should be very old. Chapter 439. Jiang Xiu's arrival caused the yellowed and incomplete talismans to flutter in the air. Even with Jiang Xiu's limited knowledge of talismans, he couldn't figure out the purpose of these talismans. However, he didn't have time to examine them and entered the palace first. The doors and windows outside were locked, and the lights inside were off. The spacious palace was pitch black, and a stone was placed in the center. It was the longevity rune stone that Jiang Xiu had seen in Wang Xintong's photo. It was also the last rune stone. No matter how he looked at it, there was nothing special about it. Other than the mysterious runes on it, there was nothing special about it. When Jiang Xiu got closer, He noticed that the runes on the longevity rune stone were very similar to those on the talismans outside. If he wasn't mistaken, the person who had set up this place must have copied the runes on the longevity rune stone and used it. Talismans couldn't be drawn just because one could draw them. One had to understand the mystery of how the runes worked and understand the corresponding incantation. Most importantly, one had to know its purpose. An exorcism talisman would be useless against an ordinary person. Jiang Xiu had reason to suspect that the person who had set up the talismans knew the secret of the longevity rune stone. Since the longevity rune stone existed on Earth, there must be someone who knew about its origin and purpose. It wasn't strange for someone to know about it. However, where were those people and things? Were they buried? The god of thunder arrived right after Jiang Xiu. Unlike Jiang Xiu, who had turned into white smoke and entered the palace, the god of thunder stopped in his tracks. There was a mysterious power in the mysterious east. The doors, windows, and eaves of the palace were covered with talismans. He scanned the underground of the palace with his divine eyes. There were 8 chains below the palace, all the way down to the depths of the ground. The chains were also covered with talismans, exuding a mysterious aura. He felt that there was a trap. Jiang Luoxia, you want to use these things against me? The god of thunder was indeed afraid of the power of the east, especially in this place where it was hundreds of times harder to absorb divine power than other places. There was a Chinese man beside him. Come in. Jiang Xiu looked around, chuckled, and then focused on the Live Forever talisman stone. He knew that Thunder God wouldn't dare to enter, so he didn't hesitate. He was no stranger to the Live Forever talisman stones, and knew that the one in front of him was the main one. He didn't think too much about it, and started to refine it. He had long since mastered the art of refinement. The incomparably tough longevity talisman stone slowly shone with a dazzling, gentle light. Glowing energy particles emerged from the stone like bubbles. It was a dazzling sight. The stones were refined into energy particles, and then refined into energy bodies, allowing Jiang Xiu to absorb them into his divine essence and fuse them with the foundation of his cultivation. His blade light was refined from 5 Live Forever talisman stones, and possessed the power of the Live Forever talisman stones. It allowed Jiang Xiu to possess the initial power of the world's laws. This was the main stone, which possessed the remaining laws of the world. Powerful energy fused into the blade light. In the next moment, a strong light flashed on his forehead. Within his divine essence, a strange godhead that Jiang Xiu didn't possess in his previous life was slowly forming. The second divine Tao diagram on his body was producing a second stroke. Boom! Jiang Xiu abruptly raised his head, and a beam of light burst out from his forehead, shooting straight into the sky. His entire body was pulled upwards, and he slowly floated upwards. His eyes were tightly shut. Within his illusory divine essence thoughts, an inexplicable understanding was constantly emerging. Many things that he didn't understand quickly became clear. It felt as though his brain was being enlightened. The power in Jiang Xiu's body soared rapidly. The powerful energy turned into characters that constantly floated around him. They were the characters on the Live Forever talisman stone. They seemed to be receiving the recognition of the world's laws that descended from the heavens. A divine cultivator, who was only at the young god level, didn't have the ability to accept the world's laws. To accept the world's laws, one had to be in existence that transcended the world. The minimum requirement was to be an earth god. If one's strength wasn't enough when the world's laws descended, both one's fate and divine body wouldn't be able to withstand it. In the end, they would be annihilated. However, the characters on the Live Forever talisman stone could resolve his crisis and allow him to accept the recognition of the world's laws. Jiang Xiu's godhead was forming. This was also Jiang Xiu's first time condensing a godhead. In his previous life, he cultivated as an immortal and condensed a golden core. The great Tao of the golden core was mysterious and boundless, and the godhead was ethereal and domineering. It was hard to say who was better. Many immortals had reached the peak, and many gods had also reached the peak. However, there was a common understanding in the immortal martial continent. There were gods first, then immortals. Even in China on Earth, everyone would call them immortals instead of immortals. Gods were in front. But what was strange was that in the immortal martial continent, gods seemed to be declining. It wasn't that they were declining, but they were becoming rare. After the top immortals fell, the gods below couldn't rush up. However, it was different for immortals. After the top immortals fell, there would be an endless stream of cultivators emerging from below. Jiang Xiu hadn't thought about this problem before. Now that he thought about it, it might be more difficult for gods to cultivate than immortals. They were more limited by their talent. It's here. Jiang Xiu had a strong feeling in his heart. He could clearly feel that he had crossed over from one world to another. That was the boundary between the sun god and the earth god. He raised his head and his eyes suddenly opened. Boom. A fierce light burst out from his eyes. Buzz, 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 a power that could affect the earth and shake the soul suddenly descended and completely covered Jiang Xiu. The light of the talisman around Jiang Xiu was distorted and violently shook. Jiang Xiu was completely isolated from this world. So powerful. Jiang Xiu could feel that boundless, ancient, and mysterious power. The complete recognition of the world's laws had finally descended. At this moment, Jiang Xiu felt as weak as an ant. This is the key to whether or not I can become an earth god. Even with Jiang Luoxia's fearlessness, he felt a trace of nervousness at this moment. The terrifying recognition of the world's laws had descended. Outside the palace, God of Thunder's heart also inexplicably tightened. The talisman pasted on the walls of the palace jumped, and the doors and windows were also shaking nonstop. What the hell? God of Thunder heard that in the mysterious east, there was something called a formation. It used the direction of a powerful airflow. It was similar to how gods use the void. It could erupt with unparalleled power. It was mysterious and unfathomable. Jiang Luoxia, are you planning to hide in there for the rest of your life? Jiang Xiu didn't need to do anything at this moment. The powerful force directly rushed into Jiang Xiu's divine energy, enveloping his soul. All the mysteries of the world's laws were thoroughly understood. Chi-Chi. The aura of the world's laws in the divine energy began to condense and materialize. At the same time, the heavenly thunder and heavenly fire laws also frantically condensed. They attached themselves to the world's laws and finally condensed into a single point. This is, in just a moment, a substance emitting a bright and dark light floated in the divine energy, closely connecting with the soul. At this point, Jiang Xiu's soul had condensed into a godhead. Success. From now on, he had become an earth god. Looking at the substance emitting a bright and dark light, and carrying a bit of the aura of heavenly thunder and heavenly fire, he finally dared to become an earth god before God of Thunder. The corner of his mouth raised into a smile. The boundless light slowly sank into Jiang Xiu's body. After the surrounding light vibrated and slowed down, it seemed like it couldn't withstand the destruction and shattered, turning into light sand. The doors and windows of the palace also stopped shaking. The talisman pasted on them also became stable. More importantly, without the suppression of the country elemental stone, the other world that had been resisting for a long time was no longer obstructed. Perhaps the stagnant cultivation in Jiang Xiu's body had suddenly loosened. Jiang Luoxia, are you really planning to be a coward for the rest of your life? God of Thunder was hesitating outside. Creak. The old wooden door of the palace opened. A figure appeared at the entrance. The sunlight outside shone on his body. His figure was very perfect. The light from the beam covered his face, making it impossible to see his appearance. However, the outline of his figure was undoubtedly Jiang Luoxia. You. That incomparably powerful aura surged over. God of Thunder's expression couldn't help but change. You, what are you doing inside? God of Thunder, today is the day you die. Prepare yourself. Chapter 440. Awareness. The muscles under Thunder God's eyes twitched. His doubtful eyes gradually revealed a look of fear. He felt an unprecedented power from Jiang Xiu's body. This power made him feel that the god of death was approaching. This power was enough to kill him. Humph! Thunder God snorted and glanced at the talismans on the palace. You think you can rely on these messy things? You Chinese people only know how to play tricks. Playing tricks? Come on. Jiang Xiu smiled coldly and rose into the sky. This was the Diaoyu platform of China. This time, Jiang Xiu rose into the sky without any restraint. He was as fast as lightning, but the surrounding air could not withstand the vibration. This was no longer breaking the sound barrier, but breaking free from the shackles of this world. Thunder God was even more shocked. The current Jiang Xiu was much more powerful than before. He could not understand how this could happen. It was as if he had risen to a higher level. However, Thunder God had just experienced Jiang Xiu's power of law. He was still far from the perfect level. Even if he could comprehend it quickly, it would take a long time. Moreover, it was harder to comprehend the power of law at the later stage. It was impossible for him to take that step. Over there. They are over there. The bosses of the Diaoyu platform rushed out of the conference hall and saw the two strong lights in the sky. They realized that their abilities were not enough to see the battle in the sky. They immediately returned to the conference room to check the signal transmitted from the satellite. They are out? In the attic, Silver Wing's eyes pierced through the clouds and saw Jiang Xiu flying in the sky. The god of thunder was hot on his tail. What a struggle! The higher a person's position was, the less support he could get. Jiang Luoxia wanted to find someone to protect him, but no one could help him. He was really at his wit's end. Silver Wing's lips curled into a scornful smile. He secretly shook his head and thought, "Why do you have to suffer so much? Why don't you have a good fight? Even if you lose, you don't lose your dignity." Jiang Luoxia can't hold on anymore? It was too fast. The old man beside him couldn't see it. Victory or defeat has already been decided before it even began. In the pavilion, Long Yingqing also saw Jiang Xiu come out and her expression tightened. She soared into the air and flew towards the distance to get closer. "Jiang Luoxia, where are you going?" Previously, when Thunder God was chasing Jiang Xiu, the distance between the two sides was constantly closing. But now he still couldn't find a way to deal with trash. His eyes flashed with shock once again. Rip. The god of thunder raised both of his hands, and a huge bolt of lightning as thick as a human pillar fell from the sky with a loud bang. His entire body erupted with an extremely strong light. Die. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds surged in the sky and swept over, forming a huge hurricane. The thunder god was like an ancient thunder god. Electricity surged, and the entire sky around him crackled incessantly, lightning flashing. Thunder god descends. Rumble. The powerful electric current in a radius of hundreds of miles converged into a lightning net, covering the sky and covering the earth. Its power was truly terrifying. Is this the final blow? Seeing the strange phenomenon in the sky, this was the only thought in the minds of countless people. This unprecedented battle was finally about to come to an end. The Japanese martial artist excitedly shouted, "Lord Thunder God, kill him, kill Jiang Luoxia. Avenge us." Rumble, rumble, the entire sky shook. The god of thunder in the sky was like the core of the lightning net, constantly erupting with powerful lightning. The power that had been accumulating in the sky for a long time suddenly smashed down. The world was full of lightning, and nothing else could be seen. A flash. The sky trembled, and the huge magnetic field of the lightning law made Jiang Luoxia unable to dodge. Under the huge cover of the huge magnetic field, his entire body was pierced through. It's over? When the big boss witnessed this scene, all the strength in his body seemed to have been sucked out of him. He slumped weakly in his seat. It's over, it's all over. Yi Huizhong also noticed the big boss's loss of composure. He was finally defeated. Jiang Luoxia, this scourge is finally going to die. Can China finally have peace? The peace he was talking about was the peace at the negotiating table that divided Huadong, Shanghai, Jiangnan, and other places as the price. However, we've also been screwed over by him. We don't know how to face the public in the future. Yi Huizhong turned to look at the big boss. You have to take full responsibility for this. Jiang Luoxia was able to act so fearlessly all because of your indulgence. I've said from the beginning that this person is a scourge. The big boss was speechless. The winner was king, and the loser was a bandit. The history of this world was written by the victors. Now anything else was superfluous. Jiang Xiu. Long Yingqing looked at Jiang Luoxia, who was bombarded by lightning in the distance. Her beautiful eyes flashed with tears. At this moment, she felt a trace of heartache. In her mind, she recalled the time in the cafeteria of Capital University. She would never forget the scene of Jiang Xiu splashing her with tomato egg soup. It was said that when a boy was young, the more he liked a girl, the more he liked to bully her. He wanted to attract the attention of his female classmates. Wasn't this correct? The girl would definitely remember the boy who always bullied her. Although she was already in university at that time, the psychology of a person would not change. The humiliation of that moment was deeply engraved in her heart, as well as everything that happened afterward. However, when she grew up, those children's quarrels would become a thing of the past, leaving behind only feelings. Alliance. Long Yingqing felt her heart crumble, because she felt that she was too useless. She would never be able to reach the level of an alliance with Jiang Xiu. There was a difference of a large realm. Under this kind of lightning, before she could even reach Jiang Xiu's side, she would have already been defeated by the lightning. Lightning of this level was enough to kill a mid-level god. Ha ha. Jiang Xiu laughed loudly. His whole body was boiling with fighting spirit. His divine power was like a vast ocean. When the lightning fell on his body, he was actually safe and sound. Except for the lightning swimming around his body, there was no trace of abnormality. What? Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Jiang Luoxia had actually used his physical body to resist the thunder god's lightning attack. No, this is impossible. The god of thunder shouted in shock. The lightning in his hand once again blasted towards Jiang Xiu. Boom. The lightning exploded on Jiang Xiu's body, but Jiang Xiu was still safe and sound. No, the god of thunder roared, and the lightning in his hand continuously blasted out. Selah, Si. On the opposite side, Jiang Luoxia seemed to be immune to the lightning. Not even a strand of hair could be hurt. How is this possible? The god of thunder was so shocked that his eyeballs were about to fall out. He gasped for breath. This was not because he was tired, but because of fear. The great fear caused his body to react. God of thunder, is it my turn? Jiang Luoxia's forehead flashed with light, and he slowly raised his head. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his eyes emitted a strange luster. The rising sun in the sky seemed to have been summoned by him, and the fierce sunlight scattered from the sky, penetrating through the countless dark clouds. The entire sky suddenly became bright, as if dawn had broken. Jiang Xiu slashed out with his blade again. This time it was different from before. The river under the sky fell, simple and majestic, with a boundless and ancient charm. It was as if Fan Rua was a deity from ancient times who had descended to the mortal world to demonstrate. The entire horizon was drawn. When the blade slashed down, the eternal heaven blade fell with it, covering tens of millions of miles. From the sky, it looked like a long sword was slashing towards the earth. Pseudo Luli sword splits the sky. At the moment when the sword fell, the entire Earth's atmosphere trembled violently. The Earth suffered an unprecedented blow. The speed of the falling sword was like a crawling snail. The atmosphere was cut off one by one like thin threads. What is that? At the god of thunder's level, he could see the sky at a glance. The sword was already coming. Jiang Luoxia in front of him shook the sky. His long hair was fluttering, his clothes were flapping, and his divine power was boiling. His eyes were shining brightly, and his battle intent was like a raging wave. He raised his hands high, as if he wanted to pry open the sky and move the earth. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was holding the sky and the moon. How is this possible? This kind of power made the god of thunder tremble all over. Could it be that you have already? Jiang Xiu said. It is your honor to kill you with the earth god's method. No, it's impossible. The god of thunder roared. The sword light in the sky had already shone down. At this moment, he was scared out of his wits. He knew that since Jiang Xiu had become the earth god, he would be the ruler of the earth. He was no match for him. What awaited him was defeat and death. Thump. The god of thunder knelt down. Please spare my life, Mr. Jiang. What was going on? Why did the god of thunder kneel to Jiang Luoxia? The people who were watching the battle through the satellite were all stunned. The few people on the fishing platform were all staring. The eyes of the central official surnamed Yi almost fell out. The big boss slowly stood up, and his confused eyes regained their luster. Chapter 441. The reversal of events was too sudden. He had always had the upper hand against Jiang Xiu, but now he suddenly knelt down before Jiang Xiu, begging like an incompetent loser. How could this be? Several big shots in the fishing platform looked at each other. Yi Zhongshu's eyes were even more confused and lost. He didn't know where to look. Everything was going well, and the matter was about to end. How could there be such a big reversal? Jiang Luoxia had actually turned the tables. What did this mean? It meant that he had withstood the greatest pressure of going against the world. Jiang Luoxia might make the whole world powerless. And the big boss had the support of Jiang Luoxia. Didn't that mean that he would be re-elected? Yi Zhongshu felt that some kind of power deep in his heart was collapsing, which made him feel desperate. The muscles on his face twitched, as if he had an epileptic seizure. It could only be said that the ups and downs of life were too fast and too exciting. In various countries around the world, countless people who watched this scene through satellites were also out of control. The leaders of Smith Barney, Apennine, the Rising Sun City, Galuya, and North Korea all stared with their eyes wide open. Their brains were buzzing. The world had really changed a lot. They had always thought that after closing their country, they would be very backward, just like the country more than 100 years ago. They would become weak, and easy to bully. They would be like a piece of cake that anyone could take a bite out of. But the reality had given them a hard slap in the face. The funny thing was that the people in the negotiation room were still arrogant and asking for sky-high prices. If Hua country dared to bargain, they would raise the price until they were afraid. What was even more ridiculous was that there was a meeting in Snow country to divide the benefits obtained from Hua country. Now they were also quarreling. The question was, would Hua country agree? Spare my life. Jiang Xiu's face was indifferent. His eyes swept across the vast sky, and his eyes were full of disdain. He didn't even look at Thunder God, who was kneeling in front of him. The moment you set foot in Hua country, did you think about the consequences of angering me, Jiang Luoxia? When you gathered the international community to put pressure on my country, did you ever think of asking me to spare your life? Don't be childish. You should know the fate of those who offend me, Jiang Luoxia. Not only will I kill you, but I will also exterminate your entire family, leaving no one alive. Thunder God's heart continued to sink. He felt an indescribable pain. It was as if he had eaten a handful of Chinese gold thread. His face became bitter, and his eyes were extremely complicated. Confusion, anger, despair, and annoyance. All of them turned into remorse, deep remorse. Ah! The saber came from the heavens, but no one knew where the saber began or where it ended. Skyblade, the real Skyblade. When the saber chi chopped down, it contained countless variations. When the boundless saber chi descended, the lightning in the sky was like a rotten fishing net. It broke inch by inch, and all the lightning was destroyed. The saber light seemed to be hurried, but it was because it was too far away. By the time it reached Thunder God's line of sight, it was just a flash. The power of this saber strike and the saber intent it contained had completely exceeded Thunder God's imagination. He had no idea how to deal with it, nor could he deal with it. Whoosh! Thunder God's body was cut from the middle. Countless powerful rays of light poured into his body crazily. The body of heavenly thunder was infinitely close to the body of earth god. It was not easy to kill him. However, this saber strike was enough to destroy the entire earth. Ah! Thunder God, who ranked first on the divine list, let out an unprecedented roar. His eyes shot out a bright white light, and his whole body tensed up in pain. His whole body had been cut in half by the light. At this moment, there was only a silver white light left between heaven and earth. There seemed to be a dislocation in space. Ah! The mournful roar gradually softened. The light in the God of Thunder's eyes continued to fade. Finally, it turned into a pair of white-silver eyes. The lightning on his body also disappeared. His body was divided into two parts and fell from the sky. Dead? Thunder God is dead. Everyone looked at this incredible scene. Boom. The saber light's momentum did not decrease, but when it chopped down on the roof, it passed through without causing any damage to the roof. There was a real dislocation in space until it disappeared into the ground, like a ray of light shining into the ground. How could this be? Many people were so shocked that their jaws dropped. Silverwing's mouth was wide open for a long time. He had just said that Jiang Luoxia would lose, and now he had been slapped in the face. He was really shocked by this saber strike. It was too powerful. The power was definitely not just limited to that of a superior god. Lost? Silverwing felt a chill run down his spine. He was here for the same reason as the Thunder God. Both of them were here to force the Hua nation to submit to the Thunder God. The Thunder God had made his move, while he had not. However, they were both here for the same reason. Now that the Thunder God had been killed, Silverwing's position had become very awkward. Who won? It was such a big movement. There was the moon, the lightning, and the saber light. However, there were only a few people who could see clearly from below. They did not understand the mystery behind it. They only cared about the outcome. There. The sun, which had risen to its peak, disappeared into thin air. The sky suddenly darkened, and the lightning disappeared. Under the gray sky, a man stood on the top of the Great Wall. Those with good eyesight could see that the man was emitting a dim light. His black hair was like a flame floating on top of his head, and his long robe was fluttering. It's Jiang Luoxia. Where is Thunder God? Jiang Luoxia won. The representatives of America Barney, Never Setting Sun, Apennine, and Galuya were all shocked. The remaining high-level officials of Re Nation looked gloomy, and their hearts were filled with grief. The Hua Nation's armament practitioners cheered. You won. Jiang Luoxia won. The Hua Nation's armament practitioners hugged each other excitedly. Yi Bing and Yi Mu were also cheering. It could be said that some people were happy, while others were sad. It was a sharp contrast to the gloomy atmosphere of the overseas representatives. However, there were still people who didn't believe it until Thunder God's body was found. They looked at the man standing on top of the Great Wall. His black hair was fluttering in the dark wind, as if he had been there since ancient times. Just like the Great Wall under his feet, he was ancient and powerful, grand and magnificent. Looking at him made one's blood boil and excited. Descending from the 9 mysteries to cleanse the heavens, 1,000 years of work. At this point, Jiang Luoxia was invincible in the world. If you hadn't forced me, I wouldn't have obtained the spirit stone of the nation in advance and become an earth god. You can be considered to have contributed greatly. The figure flew over the Great Wall. When he flew over Long Yingqing's head, she raised her snow-white neck and looked at the figure in the distance. She sighed from the bottom of her heart. Jiang Luoxia was still Jiang Luoxia after all. He had won. It seemed that her worries about him were always unnecessary. However, he had always been so powerful, which didn't mean that she would never be able to catch up to him. Instead, she would be further and further away from him. She suddenly missed her time in university. She wondered why she didn't spend more time with him back then. That way, she could have more memories. Thinking of university, she thought of another person. She took out her phone and called Cheng Lingran, who was far away in Jiangnan. Cheng Lingran didn't know the situation here. On the street, Long Yingqing's phone was extremely nervous. How is it? How are the minor repairs? Don't worry. The unlucky ones will always be his opponents. Long Yingqing's tone was filled with disappointment and helplessness, but one could feel her relaxed mood. When did you win? Cheng Lingran breathed a long sigh of relief. The joy in her eyes fell into Cheng Lingsu's eyes. The latter also breathed a sigh of relief. She turned around and walked to the bedside to look at the opposite river. She regretted the situation just now. She shouldn't have said that she regretted it. That would make her sister look down on her. Susu, did you hear that? The minor repairs won. Cheng Lingsu said. And I heard it. It's good that he won. However, no matter how glorious he is now, it has nothing to do with our Cheng family. It's just out of concern for an ordinary friend. Yes. Cheng Lingren's joyful eyes also dimmed. Susu's words just happened to describe their current situation. He's fine, it's good. Let's go. After being delayed for so long, I'm hungry. Sister, you have to treat me to a meal. On the fishing platform, the big boss clenched his right hand, clenched it into a fist, and waved it vigorously. He won. The victory of this duel would win all the glory. And his opponent, Yi Central, was completely dumbfounded. The big boss said, "Inform the negotiation team." Chapter 442. The negotiation team was still in the meeting room. They had paused several times. Now that the negotiations had failed again, it was useless to be stubborn. The group of people went to the pantry. "What should we do, Mr. Lin?" This time the main judge, Mr. Lin, took off his glasses. Although he was smart and capable, he felt tired and kept rubbing his eyes. A weak country has no diplomacy. The current situation is that the other party is clearly bullying you. Over the years, Hua country has developed too quickly, and they have suffered too much. This time, they will definitely seize the opportunity to kill you. But what can we do? Now we are not just facing America, but the entire world. We are going against the entire world. Do you understand? How could the people present not understand? However, they had already come to this point. They had a heavy responsibility on their shoulders. What could they do? They tried their best to fight for it. However, the other party was too aggressive. They had no sincerity to negotiate at all. They wantonly humiliated them at the negotiating table and trampled on Hua country's dignity without any bottom line. Mr. Lin, what do you think? I don't have so much time to waste with you. I'll give you 5 more minutes to consider. If it doesn't work, we won't be here to argue with you anymore. You know the consequences. The white-haired foreigner outside walked in with a domineering look. Mr. Lin said angrily, "Consequences? What consequences? Mr. Andre, I think you have no sincerity to negotiate with us from the beginning." Sincerity? The white-haired foreigner said. Are you qualified to mention this word? From the moment Jiang Luoxia picked up the butcher's knife, you are no longer qualified. You are butchers, demons. You don't deserve to live in this world. You, the white-haired foreigner said. I'll give you one last chance. Either sign the contract or wait for our anger. What do you mean? Mr. Lin's expression changed completely. He thought that these foreigners were taking the opportunity to humiliate them. However, the situation didn't seem like that. The other party didn't seem to want to negotiate at all. It seemed like they wanted to fight. Are you still unwilling? The white-haired foreigner asked mockingly. Mr. Lin noticed that the tip of his foot was already pointing out, ready to leave at any time. Mr. Lin's heart beat violently. He felt that something was wrong. His heart couldn't take it. Then a sharp pain hit him. He covered his heart and said, "Sign, I'll sign." Ha ha ha. The white-haired foreigner raised his head and laughed. The negotiators behind him also laughed. The Chinese in front of them was like a clown. They had played him for a long time, and in the end, he still had to give in. Sigh. Mr. Lin smacked his head with his hand. Times had changed. Mr. Lin thought that such a thing would never happen again, but he never thought that history would repeat itself. He held the pen and signed his name with trembling hands. With this draw, more than half of the land was gone. The surrounding people who had accompanied the negotiations all lowered their heads and sighed, like defeated generals. When he finished the last stroke, Mr. Lin felt like he was about to collapse. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper as he handed the contract over with trembling hands. Ha ha ha. Looking at the signed names and the generated contract, the white-haired foreigner laughed out loud. The negotiators from the other countries also laughed out loud. Laughter resounded in the conference room. It was extremely sarcastic. It's done. I believe the conference in Snow Country is almost over. The negotiators stood up one by one and prepared to leave. With a bang, the 9-meter-tall conference room door was pushed open. The big boss's secretary appeared at the door. His face was serious, but his face was full of pride. His steps were steady and powerful, and his eyes were shining. We don't have to sign the contract. The white-haired foreigner waved the contract in his hand and said, You seem to be late. Your people have already signed the contract. The secretary was stunned. They've signed it. Ha ha ha. It's written in black and white. He pointed at the surveillance camera above. There's also a camera as proof. You're too late. The representatives of the other countries around also laughed. They were very proud, especially the representative of Japan. His eyes were extremely arrogant. This was the price for everything that Jiang Luoxia had done in Japan. Mr. Lin's face darkened. I'm sorry. The secretary smiled and reached out to take the contract in Mr. Lin's hand. He looked at it, and the veins on his forehead bulged. Finally, he shook his head and tore the contract in front of everyone's stunned eyes. You. The white-haired foreigner was so shocked that he was speechless. What are you doing? The people around him shouted angrily. Crazy, crazy, the people of China are crazy. The secretary said. If you don't like the contract, tear it up. Mr. Lin and the group of Chinese people were also stunned. What was going on? Sir, do you know what you're doing? You have to take responsibility for tearing up the contract in public. The white-haired foreigner was enraged. Do you believe that we'll join forces to beat you up? The secretary said. Beat us up. If you don't beat us up, we won't let you go. America, Japan, never setting sun, blast furnace Asia. None of you can escape from this. Are you crazy? The great secretary said. Oh right, I forgot to tell you. The god of thunder was begging Mr. Jiang for mercy, but you all know Mr. Jiang's temper. He's the devil you all speak of. How can anyone who offends him have a good ending? He didn't care about the god of thunder's pleas at all. His blade was mercilessly raised and cut the god of thunder in half from the middle. The people on the other side were all stunned. Thunder god is dead? The secretary said to Mr. Lin, let's go. There's no need to deal with this group of people anymore. What's waiting for them is the anger of Mr. Jiang and the big boss. They'll pay a price 1,000 times more painful than what's in the contract for their insolence just now. The white-haired old man was so scared that his whole body trembled. He hurriedly shouted, please wait. What else do you want to say? The white-haired old man swallowed hard and said, I'm sorry, honorable sir. We were wrong, we were wrong. Let's talk again, okay? Again very soon. The secretary smiled coldly. There's nothing to talk about. Japan is your example. Ah. The white-haired old man's eyes were about to pop out. The scene in Tokyo appeared in his mind. He knelt on the ground with a plop. No, don't go. Let's talk, okay? We'll agree to all your conditions. The secretary shook his head and said, it's too late. Mr. Jiang's temper is definitely not an eye for an eye. He always wants to kill all of them and leave no one alive. After saying that, the secretary ignored them and turned to leave. Mr. Lin and the others felt proud and elated. They felt completely refreshed. Sir. The white-haired old man and the negotiators from various countries were stunned, as if they had lost their parents. At the entrance of the Diaoyu platform, the big boss personally lined up to welcome them. However, Jiang Luoxia did not appear. He had always been like this, as if nothing in the secular world was what he wanted. He fought for power and sought victory. As for the benefits of the secular world, he did not care at all. At this moment, he had already returned to the manor. Wang Xintong stood under the eaves. At this moment, the surrounding area had already been lit up. From afar, she could see the figure gliding through the air. Looking at the figure, although she already knew the result, she was still inexplicably excited. You're back. Jiang Xiu's face was still indifferent, but Wang Xintong's uncontrollable excitement formed a huge contrast. It was as if he had just gone out for a walk. Get something to eat. Seeing that he was still indifferent, Wang Xintong's heart collapsed. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. Jiang Xiu passed by her. Looking at his cold and arrogant back, Wang Xintong said, I want to dance for you. Jiang Xiu rarely said, let's eat and watch. Okay. Wang Xintong's voice was a little more joyful. She immediately turned around and left. As soon as Jiang Xiu entered the room, the phone rang. Hello. You definitely don't need my congratulations. Long Yingqing's voice was a little bored. So I'm not calling to congratulate you. You have an old friend who is very concerned about you and called me, so I think it's necessary to tell you. Cheng Lingran was a special person. Long Yingqing felt that she had to tell Jiang Xiu. Old friend. Long Yingqing said. Yes, old friend. A friend from when we were studying at the capital university. I think you will never forget her. Campus bell Qingling ran. Chapter 443. Jiang Xiu fell silent. Of course, he wouldn't forget the person who saved him like an angel in his previous life. Cheng Lingran left a mark in his heart that could never be erased. What did she say? Long Yingqing heard Jiang Xiu's calm tone and felt inexplicably disappointed. A long time ago, Long Yingqing had envied Cheng Lingran. In the past, she didn't understand why she was envious. In terms of family background, it was far inferior to her. In terms of talent, it was even more different. But now she understood that it was because of Jiang Xiu. She said, "She begged me." Begged you? Jiang Xiu frowned. In his previous life, Cheng Lingran had also begged others to find a job for him. This made the proud Jiang Luoxia very annoyed. It was like this in the past, it was like this now, and it would be like this in the future. Yes, she begged me to save you. Jiang Xiu's brows relaxed slightly. He was moved, but in the next moment he frowned again and softly spat out a sentence. Self-righteous. I can feel that she has you in her heart. Jiang Xiu's eyes slowly looked in the direction of Jiang Nan. His eyes were dark. He knew that Cheng Lingran had him in her heart, but could that be love? Childhood sweethearts had each other in their lives for 20 years. There were definitely feelings. It was more like the care of an old friend for many years. You called me just to tell me this? Long Yingqing said. Not entirely. Last time in Huadong, you still owe me a meal. You still owe me a life. Long Yingqing couldn't help but roll her eyes. Jiang Xiu was very scary, but that was when he was angry. It was impossible for anyone to be angry. But when he wasn't angry, she still felt quite good. That's why I said, come out and let's settle the accounts. Jiang Xiu sneered. You're mine. Why are you still settling accounts with me? His words made Long Yingqing's cheeks burn. Rogue. What a domineering sentence. It made our Long Yingqing school belle hear rogue words. Later, I'll eat something first. Not far away, Wang Xintong personally brought in the dishes. From time to time, she would tuck her hair behind her ears to prevent it from falling into the dishes. She glanced sideways at Jiang Xiu, her eyes full of charm. She placed the long table in front of Jiang Xiu. The curtains of the bed were drawn, and a faint light was lit. She slowly took off her clothes. Every movement of hers was natural, as if she was the goddess of Luo. Her cultivation progress could only be considered average. Judging from her dancing and her high IQ, her talent was definitely not bad. The reason for her slow progress was that Jiangnan was, after all, busy, so she spent more time practicing her dance. In terms of cultivation, she wanted to please Jiang Xiu more. Wang Xintong raised her arm and lifted her beautiful face. Her beautiful chest stood proudly in front of her. Then, she turned around and jumped, landing on the ground and circling around, showing off her charm. Her low moans and soft breathing sounds were like a song in the night wind. Her gaze was full of affection and charm. Her beautiful figure was projected on the wall. The shadow was enchanting and her movements were seductive. After a long time, Wang Xintong's soft body visibly twitched. Her eyes were still looking at Jiang Xiu, but her gaze was already unfocused. Sweat slid down her forehead, along her beautiful cheeks, and dripped to the ground, smashing into pieces. She no longer had a trace of strength. Every dance ended in this way. She would lie there motionless, her body twitching a few times from time to time. Her beautiful face was full of satisfaction. Are you dancing for me, or do you need me to watch you dance? Why, every time I watch you, I always have the urge to collect money. I feel like I've lost 100 million yuan. Wang Xintong laughed and looked at Jiang Xiu charmingly. You're so annoying. The spring evening breeze was indescribably comfortable. After Wang Xintong took a bath, she appeared refreshed beside Jiang Xiu in the attic. Her face was still flushed, and there was gentleness. The big boss wants to see you. Jiang Xiu said. Is the negotiation over? We've already signed the contract. The contract was ugly, but luckily you won. The big secretary tore the contract in front of the foreigners. The division is planning to leave tomorrow. Jiang Xiu coldly said. What kind of place do you think we are? You think you can come and go as you please? The big boss is looking for us to talk about this. Jiang Xiu said. All right, then let's meet. Arrange for people to go to Jiangnan and bring my parents here. He remembered that when he first came back, he said that he wanted to make Lin Yueling the richest woman in the world. Today, he had already become an earth god and could leave for the immortal Martial continent at any time. Before he left, he wanted to do what he couldn't do. I understand. The current Jiang Xiu was the ruler of the world and had unlimited glory. When a person was happy, they wanted to share it with others. Then I'll arrange for people to invite the old lady and the old man here. Jiang Xiu nodded. Spend more time on cultivation. The other world's descent can no longer be stopped. In the future, the earth will develop in the direction of cultivation. And cultivation can protect one's appearance and allow one to live longer. She blinked and said, Oh. At this time, Jiang Xiu's phone vibrated. It was a message from Long Yingqing. Are you coming or not? I'm waiting for you. Jiang Xiu. Where do you want to meet? Long Yingqing, the school. Wang Xintong arranged for a car to send Jiang Xiu there. Originally, Long Yingqing was a very good choice. Unfortunately, this woman's temperament was unstable. Jiang Xiu couldn't see through her, and didn't dare to entrust his parents' safety to her. The outside of the capital had changed a lot. The old streets were all rebuilt. After passing through the night market, they entered the school. It was already late, around 10 o'clock. The evening self-study in the school had already ended. Only the dormitory lights were still on. Long Yingqing. I'm at the entrance of the cafeteria. Under the moonlight, a peerless beauty stood there with her hands behind her back. She wasn't as domineering as the boys. Her posture looked more mischievous than before. The cafeteria's door is closed. Long Yingqing said, So be it. I didn't plan to invite you here. I just wanted to come here and take a look. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, more than 3 years have passed. We've all grown up. Jiang Xiu said, You're very impressive. You're ranked first on the school's ranking list. Are you jealous? Long Yingqing asked with a serious face. If you're willing to publicly announce that Jiang Xiu is Jiang Luoxia, then you'll definitely be first. It's rare for a little girl to get first place. I think you're embarrassed to fight with me. Jiang Xiu chuckled. We met in the cafeteria. You stood up for Cheng Lingran and splashed tomato egg soup on my face. Yes, and then I splashed a basin of feces on your head. Boring. Long Yingqing was very angry. She always touched the pot that didn't boil. Let me tell you something serious. How are you and Cheng Lingran? She shouldn't have any reason to refuse you. Jiang Xiu's gaze was cast in the distance. It was also very close. The bright moon was also very bright. It was very comfortable, but there was a trace of disappointment in his eyes. He shook his head. If you like someone, you don't have a choice. If you can choose, then it's not like. Long Yingqing was also sad. It was because there was no choice. Love was what made people obsessed. So she doesn't like you? Jiang Xiu was silent. It could be considered as an admission. Why? When she asked this question, Long Yingqing felt that she was stupid again. Jiang Xiu was even more silent. Sometimes, he even wanted Cheng Lingran to be like her mother. She could be a bit snobbish and covet his power and money. But Cheng Lingran was a seriously ill literary girl. If she could bend over for 5 bushels of rice, she wouldn't be her. Then does she have someone she likes? This question really stumped Jiang Xiu. Cheng Lingran's world was so small. There were no other boys. She gave most of her time to herself. When she was in university, there were still pursuers, but they were all rejected. Later, there were no boys by her side. She knew how to deal with the boys' entanglement, but no boy could get close to her, except for himself. I'm not sure. Long Yingqing said. Didn't you ask her? No. Long Yingqing said. You should ask her. A girl, and a girl like her, should have a lot of pursuers. It's already considered few to have 3 or 5 boys, let alone none. Jiang Xiu said. You called me out today just to say this. Of course not. I'm not a gossip paparazzi. I want to ask you how you will deal with the following matters. There is still a third on the divine list in the capital. Chapter 444. Jiang Luoxia 1. In this era of information explosion, this news swept through the world like a gale. The entire God's emergence world was shaken, especially the experts from overseas. It was like a blow to the head. It made them realize that the East was no longer a weak country that they could wantonly humiliate. On the contrary, not only could they not humiliate them, they were above them, controlling their fate and toying with their life and death. How should we deal with this? Jiang Xiu's eyes flashed with a cold intent. Those who offend me, Jiang Luoxia, will never be repaid with retribution. Instead, I will kill all of them, and not leave a single one alive. Long Yingqing felt a cold intent spread out. No one doubted Jiang Luoxia's determination, and no one dared to doubt Jiang Luoxia's determination. Jiang Xiu's ruthlessness was not something she had experienced just once or twice, and he, Jiang Luoxia, would not change either. It was like this before, it was like this now, and it would be like this in the future. Then will you offend many people? Jiang Xiu coldly said. So what if I become enemies with the entire world? Peak experts were all like this. They only had themselves in their eyes, and behind their glory was loneliness. Long Yingqing's hands and feet turned cold. She was willing to get close to Jiang Xiu. This person seemed to have some kind of magic that deeply attracted her, but she was also extremely afraid of Jiang Xiu. He was a god and also a demon. You won't have any friends like this. Jiang Xiu said. Aren't you? Long Yingqing said. You don't treat me as a friend. At most, you treat me as a servant. When my long family relied on you before, that was what you meant. Jiang Xiu said. What can I do? You grew wings and flew away. However, when did he, Jiang Luoxia, ever lack a servant? He didn't lack her at all. Long Yingqing bit her especially bright red lips and said, What's so good about being your servant? I'll serve you tea and serve you, but I won't receive any love. Can I be promoted? Jiang Xiu said. You haven't made any contributions yet you want to be promoted? Long Yingqing pouted, and was a little emotional. It wasn't that she didn't want to help Jiang Xiu, but he was too strong and didn't need her at all. What can I do? Pour tea and water, wash clothes and fold the quilt. Jiang Xiu smiled and declined to comment. The campus at night was exceptionally quiet. The night breeze blew the leaves on the side of the road, and they kept swaying. The two of them walked side by side. Time seemed to have returned to the time when they were students. Long Yingqing was thinking that if it weren't for the changes that happened in the future, if they were just ordinary students studying on campus, she didn't know if she would have developed feelings for Jiang Xiu and have a beautiful relationship with him. She felt that it was quite possible. Of course, Cheng Lingran would be Jiang Xiu's first choice. But when Jiang Xiu couldn't get her if she took the initiative, Jiang Xiu would definitely accept her. She was the campus belle, so she wouldn't be unable to get him. All of that could only exist in fantasy. Isn't the Long family doing well in the north? Long Yingqing sighed and said. In the eyes of the people of North Korea, we are still outsiders. And in China, we have become traitors. You won't understand. Jiang Xiu said. Then come back but don't give up on the north. Long Yingqing said. I didn't beg you. Beside them was the bench by the grass. Back then Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran sat there and chatted. She came to Jiang Xiu and begged him to protect the Long family. Now that she was in this position, Long Yingqing felt a little guilty. Hee, Jiang Xiu said. This can be considered a promise from before. The Long family being chased out was definitely not the big boss's idea. It should be the others, especially the Zhuge family, who were more or less related to Jiang Xiu. The Long family was regarded as Jiang Xiu's faction. Now that the Long family was in such a situation, Jiang Xiu naturally had to deal with it. Righteous, let's go, I'll treat you to a meal, Jiang Xiu said. If I don't agree, I won't be able to eat this meal. You should have treated me. The night market outside the capital was bustling, and the two of them casually found a place to sit down. At this moment, Long Yingqing really felt like she had returned to school, and the person sitting opposite her was also the right person. The two of them made some barbecue, and Jiang Xiu even ordered a bowl of casserole, and ate it contentedly. Have you been here with Cheng Lingran before? No. The shops here were all new. How could Long Yingqing not know? She just wanted to find out about the relationship between Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran. Sometimes, a woman's straightforwardness was very accurate. Not to mention that Jiang Xiu had made a move on her for Cheng Lingran. Do you want to get it back? Jiang Xiu secretly shook his head. So the cold and aloof school flower's heart is so gossipy. Long Yingqing said. I just want you to be happy. Happy? Jiang Xiu laughed. This thing was poison to Jiang Xiu. In his previous life, he couldn't see any light in his life, he couldn't see any hope, so he treated everything indifferently. It was because of this that he became the head of the Tianxing school. In a world of killing, happiness would only stifle one's ambition. A gentle village, a hero's mound. Only with the trend of happiness would he work hard to pursue better power in an attempt to change his fate. And when he stepped on this path, happiness left him even further away. He only had Dugu to accompany him, and he walked further and further on the road of loneliness. I don't need it, Long Yingqing said. What if Cheng Lingran also likes you? Chopsticks hanging in the air, Jiang Xiu looked up. This was his extravagant wish to come back. He liked to change this matter the most, but it seemed that it was already predestined. Why do you say that? Long Yingqing thought for a moment. Intuition, a woman's intuition. Whether or not the other person has you in his heart. A sensitive person can tell with just a glance. You're so magnanimous to accept my Long family again. I feel that I should do something for you, Jiang Xiu said. You don't want to thank me at all. I already said that the Long family was expelled, to a certain extent, because of me. You have the right to come back. You're just gossiping. Some people were just good matchmakers. Hee. Long Yingqing mischievously laughed, but she was very disappointed. She regretted her university life, but she didn't like Jiang Xiu and Cheng Lingran. The next day, a private jet from Jiangnan landed. The entire imperial capital airport was on alert. This time, even the big boss came to personally welcome them. Other than the big boss, there was also the big boss of America, Roger, the big boss of Never Setting Sun, the big boss of Apennine, the leaders of various countries. This was an unprecedented welcoming team. It wasn't that Jiang Xiu forced them to come, but when these people heard that Jiang Luoxia's parents were coming to imperial capital, they immediately realized that this was their only chance to atone for their sins and live. Lin Yueling and Jiang Yi appeared at the entrance of the plane. Welcome, welcome, a warm welcome. Well, the couple was shocked by the scene in front of them. Lin Yueling was a little better because she didn't know who the foreigner was, but Jiang Yi was involved in politics. He was familiar with these foreigners, and they were all leaders of the country. Now Zhang Lai actually lined up in a row to welcome him. It was just like a dream. Of course, the couple didn't have such influence. All of this was naturally because of Jiang Xiu. He slowly walked down with Lin Yueling. Those foreigners were obedient, nodding their heads and flattering them like slaves. Jiang Yi walked down in a daze. His heart was set off stormy waves. He was so excited that he couldn't control himself. His son was actually so promising. Hot tears fell from his eyes. His son, who he missed out on growing up because he was in prison, had already grown into a towering tree and brought him infinite glory. He was afraid that no one had such glory since ancient times. Looking from the corridor, a car was parked in the distance. Jiang Xiu was standing beside the car. At this moment, even Jiang Yi and his wife, who were parents, were moved by him. The demeanor of a king was revealed. Comrade Jiang Yi, welcome to imperial capital. The big boss shook his hand. Madam Lin Yueling, you gave birth to a good son. At the periphery of the airport, the people of the Lin family squeezed to the front. Seeing this scene, they sighed in their hearts. Jiang Xiu's family was actually so prosperous. This was a real king descending to the world. Thank you, thank you. Lin Yueling came to the front of the car amidst the sound of drums and music. She said to Jiang Xiu, Son, what's going on? Even the big boss is here. There are so many foreigners, Jiang Yi said with a strange expression. Those are all national leaders. Almost all the powerful countries are here. Ah! Lin Yueling exclaimed softly. These people are all here to welcome us? She couldn't believe it. What did she do? Jiang Xiu said. I said that I would make you the richest person in the world. Son, in ancient times she would definitely be the Empress Dowager. You're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.